I paid off my brother's debt to keep him out of jail. A year later, he tried to claim ownership of my house. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, and heavy. It wasn't the kind of stationery you pick up at a drugstore. It was the kind that costs billable hours. I stood in my kitchen, the same kitchen I had remodeled 3 years ago with my own bonuses and savings, and stared at the return address. It was from a law firm downtown. A real estate litigation firm. My brother, Jake, was sitting at the kitchen island eating a bowl of cereal. He didn't look up when I walked in with the mail. He just kept crunching on his Honey Nut Cheerios, scrolling through his phone with that detached, leisurely arrogance that had come to define the last 12 months of my life. I opened the envelope. I read the cover letter. Then I read the attached filing. Constructive trust. Equitable interest. Quiet title. The legal jargon was dense, but the message was crystal clear. My brother, the man whose $58,000 debt I had paid off exactly 14 months ago to prevent him from facing fraud charges and a potential prison sentence, was suing me. He was claiming that he owned 50% of my house. I looked at him. He finally looked up, milk dripping from his chin. "You got it?" he asked. His voice was calm. Terrifyingly calm. "You're suing me," I said. It wasn't a question. "I'm just formalizing the arrangement, Mark," he said, putting the spoon down. "Sarah and I talked about it. It's the only fair way to handle the equity I've put into this place." I placed the letter on the counter. My hands weren't shaking. I was past anger. I was in a state of cold, absolute clarity. This is the story of how I saved my brother's life, and how he tried to take mine in return. To understand the insanity of that kitchen moment, you have to understand the dynamic between Jake and me. I am the older brother by 2 years. I am the boring one. I went to college, got a degree in supply chain management, and took a job that requires staring at spreadsheets for 60 hours a week. I save 40% of my income. I drive a 5-year-old sedan. I bought my house, a 4-bedroom colonial in a rapidly gentrifying suburb, when the market dipped, and I have paid the mortgage religiously every month. Jake is the visionary. Jake is the one who believes that 9-to-5 jobs are for suckers. He has been an aspiring DJ, a cryptocurrency consultant, a dropshipping mogul, and a lifestyle coach. He is charismatic, handsome, and completely incapable of understanding consequences. Our parents, specifically our mother, have enabled this behavior for decades. They view my stability as luck and his recklessness as bad breaks. The crisis that started this nightmare happened in November of the previous year. Jake had started a business. It was a boutique sneaker resale operation. He had taken investments from 3 people, a former college roommate, a guy he knew from the gym, and a silent partner who turned out to be less silent and more litigious. Jake took $58,000 of their money to secure exclusive inventory. There was no inventory. Jake had used the money to fund a lifestyle that made him look like a successful sneaker mogul to get more investors. It was a Ponzi scheme, essentially, though Jake swore he just mismanaged the cash flow. The silent partner wasn't interested in excuses. He had filed a civil complaint that was rapidly escalating toward criminal fraud charges because Jake had forged purchase orders to show where the money went. The prosecutor was sniffing around. Jake was looking at real-time. Grand larceny and fraud. My mother called me at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday hysterical. "You have to help him, Mark. He's going to go to prison. He's just a boy. He made a mistake." He was 27 years old. I went to my parents' house. Jake was there, looking small and pale. He didn't have the swagger then. He was crying, shaking, terrified of the reality crashing down on him. "I can fix this," he pleaded. "I just need the capital to pay them back. If I pay them back, they drop the charges. It's a civil compromise. Please, Mark. I'll pay you back. I swear." I looked at the numbers. I looked at the legal threats. It was true. If he made full restitution immediately, the victims agreed to sign non-prosecution affidavits. I had the money. It was my aggressive savings for a future rental property, my emergency fund, and a chunk of my retirement liquidity. It was $58,000. "I will do this," I told him, sitting at my parents' dining table. "But these are the conditions. 1. You sign a promissory note to me. 2. You get a real job. Any job. 3. You pay me $500 a month minimum until you get on your feet, then we scale it up." "Done," Jake said. "Anything. You're saving my life, Mark." I wired the money the next day. The charges disappeared. The debt was gone. Jake was free. But Jake was also broke. He had been evicted from his luxury apartment because, obviously, he hadn't been paying rent there either. "He can't stay with us," my dad said. My dad had health issues, and the stress of Jake's drama was literally killing him. "We can't handle the chaos, Mark." So, against every alarm bell ringing in my head, I made the second mistake. "You can stay in my guest room," I told Jake. "For 3 months. Just until you get a paycheck coming in. You don't pay rent. You just pay for your own food and help around the house." "You're the best brother in the world," Jake said. He hugged me. I felt like a hero. I was an idiot. The first month was fine. Jake got a job at a warehouse. It was humble work, hard work. He came home tired. He cleaned his dishes. He seemed humbled by the near miss with incarceration. The shift happened in month 3. This was when he met Sarah. Sarah was a barista at a high-end coffee shop, but she described herself as an interior design intuitive. She had strong opinions on feng shui and energy flow. She started spending the night at my place 3 times a week. Then 5. I sat Jake down. "She's here a lot, Jake. I don't mind her visiting, but she practically lives here. And the 3-month mark is coming up." "Mark, come on," Jake said. His tone had shifted. The humility was gone, replaced by a defensive edge. "We're laying low. We're saving money. She's helping me get organized. Plus, she thinks this house has massive potential if you just listen to her ideas." "I don't need ideas," I said. "I need you to stick to the plan." "I am sticking to the plan," he insisted. "I'm working. Look, I can't move out yet. Deposits are insane. Give me another 6 months. I'll pay you rent. I'll pay $800 a month." I did the math. $800 was helpful. It would help recoup the $58,000 loss faster than the $0 I was currently getting. "Fine," I said. 6 more months. $800 a month. But Sarah doesn't move in officially. "Cool," he said. 2 weeks later, Sarah moved in. I came home from work to find boxes in the hallway and a cat carrier in the living room. "She lost her lease," Jake said, standing between me and the boxes. "It's temporary. She's going to chip in for groceries." I should have kicked them out then. But I am conflict-averse by nature, and I was busy at work. I let it slide. That was the agreement phase. Now we enter the sweat equity phase. Over the next 6 months, money changed hands. Jake transferred $800 to me on the 1st of the month. Sometimes it was $400 on the 1st and $400 on the 15th. But he paid. However, things in the house started to change. I came home one Tuesday to find the living room wall painted a deep, jarring teal. "What is this?" I asked, dropping my briefcase. Sarah walked in, wiping paint off her hands. "It's oceanic depth. The beige was stifling your prosperity energy, Mark. We did you a favor." "You didn't ask me," I said. "We wanted to surprise you," Jake said, emerging from the kitchen with a beer. "Cost us $200 in supplies. Don't worry about reimbursing us." "Reimbursing you? You painted my wall a color I hate without asking." "You'll get used to it," Sarah said dismissively. "It raises the property value." This became the pattern. I would come home to find improvements. They replaced the hardware on the kitchen cabinets with cheap gold-colored handles that didn't fit the holes properly. They dug up a patch of my backyard grass to plant a permaculture herb spiral that turned into a mud pit when it rained. Every time I complained, they acted like I was being ungrateful. "We're putting work into the house, Mark," Jake would say. "We're treating it like our own. Most tenants don't do that." "You aren't tenants," I reminded him. "You are guests who pay a fee to cover utilities and wear and tear." "We're family," he corrected. Then came the family meeting with our parents. It was roughly 10 months into this arrangement. I went to my parents' house for Sunday dinner. Jake and Sarah were there. "Jake tells us he's really turning the house around," my mom said, beaming. He says he's managing the property for you. Managing. I choked on my roast beef. He lives in the spare room. He says he's doing all the maintenance, Dad said. Fixing the landscaping. Painting. That's good, Mark. It's good he's taking ownership of his responsibilities. I looked at Jake. He winked. I realized then that he was spinning a completely different narrative to the world. In his version, he wasn't the charity case living in his brother's guest room. He was the co-manager of a real estate asset. The breaking point was the garage. I have a 1969 Mustang. It's a shell. It's my project car. It sits on one side of the two-car garage. I came home in November, 1 year after the bailout, to find my Mustang pushed into the driveway, under a tarp. Inside the garage, Jake and Sarah had set up a studio. Rugs on the concrete, podcast microphones, a ring light, and a backdrop. What is my car doing in the rain? I asked. I was shaking. We need the space for the podcast, Jake said. We're launching the hustle mindset. It's going to be huge. We need a professional environment. Get it out, I said. Get all of it out. You are done. You have 30 days to vacate. Jake's face went cold. You can't kick us out. We have rights. You have 30 days, I repeated. Or I file for eviction. After everything we've done for this place. Sarah spat. We increased the equity by at least 20 grand with our design work. The teal wall is not equity, I shouted. Get out. That was the last real conversation we had before the letter arrived. Now, back to the kitchen. The letter. I read the filing more closely. Jake's lawyer, a guy named Rick who I later found out had a 2.5-star rating on Google, was constructing a narrative that was truly breathtaking in its audacity. The argument was threefold. The $58,000 bailout was actually a buy-in. Jake claimed that the money I paid to his creditors was not a loan from me to him. He claimed it was an investment I made into him, which we then mutually agreed to convert into equity in the house so he could manage the property. He argued that the promissory note I mentioned never existed. I had lost the physical copy in a cleaning frenzy, a fact he likely knew, but I had a digital scan. Sweat equity and improvements. He listed every single project they had done. Painting the wall. The cabinet handles. The mud pit herb garden. He assigned arbitrary, inflated values to these tasks. He claimed property management services valued at $2,000 a month. The mortgage payments. He claimed his $800 monthly transfers were mortgage contributions, proving intent of ownership. He was asking for 50% of the current market value of the home, or a buyout of $150,000. I called my lawyer, a woman named Elena who I use for business contracts. Elena, I need you to look at something. I sent her the PDF. She called me back an hour later. She was laughing. Is this a joke? She asked. My brother doesn't think so. Okay, Mark. Here's the reality. Anyone can sue for anything. This lawyer is throwing spaghetti at the wall. But, it's dangerous spaghetti. If they can prove there was a verbal agreement regarding ownership, it gets messy. Do you have a lease? No. Just texts. Do you have the promissory note for the $58,000? I have a scan. The original is gone. Scan is fine. Texts are good. We need to counterfile immediately. We need to file for an ejection, not just eviction, since he's claiming title. And Mark? Do not talk to him. Do not text him. Record every interaction if you are in the same room, if your state allows it. My state is a one-party consent state. I started recording immediately. That night, the atmosphere in the house was toxic. Jake and Sarah were cooking dinner like they were celebrating. They popped a bottle of champagne. Celebrating the lawsuit? I asked, walking through to get water. Phone in my pocket, recording app running. Celebrating our future, Jake said. Look, Mark, we don't want to fight. Just cut us a check for the equity we built, and we'll go. We'll sign a quitclaim. $100,000. We'll drop the demand from $150,000 because you're family. You think you own my house because you painted a wall? I asked calmly. I own this house because we are partners, Jake said. You paid off my business debt. That was family money. You used family money to secure your asset. That makes it family property. Mom agrees. Mom agrees. Mom knows the truth, he said. I went to my room and called my mother. Did you tell Jake he owns half my house? I asked. There was a long silence on the line. Mark, listen, she began, her voice wavering. Jake explained it to me. He said the $58,000 you used was, well, it was money that we would have eventually left to you boys anyway. So really, you used his inheritance early. And since you used it to keep your finances stable, it's only fair he gets a stake in the house so he has security too. He needs a win, Mark. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Mom, that was my money. I earned it. It wasn't inheritance. You and Dad are still alive. There is no inheritance. Well, spiritually, it's all family resources, she said. He just wants what's fair. He did so much work on that garden. I hung up. I realized then that I wasn't fighting just Jake. I was fighting the family mythology that Jake was a victim who needed to be compensated for his own failures. The next 2 months were hell. I couldn't kick them out immediately because of the pending litigation regarding ownership. My lawyer advised me to stay put. If you leave, you abandon the property. If you lock them out, it's an illegal eviction because they have a claim of title pending. You have to live with them. Living with someone who is actively suing you for your home is a unique form of psychological torture. They stopped paying the $800. We're deducting it from the legal fees you're forcing us to incur, Sarah told me. They turned up the heat to 80 degrees and left windows open. They took long showers. They invited friends over for strategy sessions in the living room until 3 a.m. I retreated to my bedroom. I installed a keyed deadbolt on my bedroom door. I bought a mini fridge. I lived like a prisoner in the house I owned. But I was also working. I dug through 3 years of bank statements. I found the email chain from the night of the bailout. From Mark to Jake, subject, loan terms date, November 14, 2023. Jake, confirming the wire of $58,000. This is a loan. You agree to repay fully. Attached is the note. From Jake to Mark, loan terms. Yes. Thank you. I will pay back every cent. You are saving my life. I have zero claim to anything. I just need out of this hole. I sent this to Elena. This is the smoking gun, she said. He explicitly says loan and zero claim. Why didn't you show me this earlier? I had to dig it out of an archived folder, I said. This kills the constructive trust argument, Elena said. We file for summary judgment. We had a court date set for a preliminary hearing. The day before the hearing, I came home to find my parents in the living room. It was an ambush. Mark, sit down, my dad said. He looked tired. Jake was sitting in the armchair, looking solemn. Sarah was holding his hand. We need to settle this, Mom said. We can't have brothers in court. Then tell him to drop the lawsuit and move out, I said. He can't just move out with nothing, Mom said. He's put a year of his life into this house. He lived rent-free for 3 months and cheap for the rest. I yelled. I saved him from prison. Don't bring up the past, Jake said. This is about the present. Mark, just give me $50,000. That's less than the debt you paid. Call it a wash. I walk away. You get the house. Wait, I said. You want me to give you $50,000? After I paid $58,000 of your debt? So I'm out $108,000 total. You're not out anything, Jake said. You have the house. The house went up in value. I helped that value. I deserve my share of the appreciation. No, I said. I am going to court. I am going to win. And then I am going to garnish your wages for the rest of your life to get my $58,000 back. You wouldn't do that, Mom whispered. He's your brother. He ceased to be my brother when he served me with a lawsuit, I said. He's just a guy trying to steal my house. I walked out. I stayed at a hotel that night. The hearing was anticlimactic, as legal things often are. We sat in a conference room. Elena slid the email printout across the table to Rick, Jake's budget lawyer. Rick read the email. He looked at Jake. You said there was no written agreement defining this as a loan, Rick said. I forgot about that email, Jake mumbled. But the context changed later. We had verbal agreements. Verbal agreements don't supersede a written admission of debt and a denial of claim, Elena said. Your case for constructive trust is dead. If you proceed, we will countersue for legal fees, malicious prosecution, and the full $58,000 plus interest. Rick took Jake into the hallway. They argued. I could hear shouting. They came back in 10 minutes later. My client is willing to withdraw the suit without prejudice if the eviction timeline is extended to 60 days, Rick said. With prejudice, Elena corrected. He withdraws it permanently. He admits he has no interest in the property. And he is out in 14 days. Or we go to trial. Jake looked at me. He looked for the weakness, the brotherly guilt. He didn't find it. 30 days, Rick negotiated. And mutual non-disparagement. 30 days, I agreed. But I'm not signing a non-disparagement. He tried to defraud me. I'll tell whoever I want. They signed. The move out was ugly. They didn't pack until day 29. They damaged the drywall, moving the furniture out. They took the gold handles off the cabinets, leaving the holes stripped. They dug up the herb garden, leaving a crater in the backyard. My mom came to help them move. She wouldn't look at me. I hope you're happy, she said as she carried a box of Sarah's throw pillows to the rental van. You chose money over family. I chose reality over theft, I said. Jake didn't say goodbye. He just drove the van away. I changed the locks an hour later. I installed cameras. It's been 6 months since they left. The house is quiet. I repainted the living room. It took 3 coats of primer to cover the teal. I fixed the cabinets. I resodded the backyard. I haven't spoken to Jake. I hear through the grapevine that he and Sarah broke up. Apparently, without a free house to renovate, the stress of actual rent tore them apart. He's back living with our parents. My parents call me occasionally. They talk about the weather. They don't mention Jake. They are waiting for me to apologize. They are waiting for me to admit that I was too harsh. I never will. The debt is still outstanding. I have the judgment for the $58,000. I filed a separate suit for the breach of the promissory note immediately after they moved out. I haven't tried to collect on it yet. I'm holding it. It's my insurance policy. As long as that debt hangs over him, he can't come back. I learned an expensive lesson. You can pay someone's debt, but you can't buy their character. I thought I was keeping him out of jail. In reality, I was just inviting him into my own personal prison. But the walls are painted agreeable gray now. The mortgage is paid. And the house is mine. I was belittled for being too quiet and ruining the vibe. Then I caught the cool kids embezzling $500,000 in inventory. I am writing this from a laptop that technically belongs to my former employer, but since they gave it to me as part of my severance plus hush money package, I suppose it's mine now. I'm posting this here because I need to get it out of my system, and frankly, the NDA only covers specific trade secrets and names, not the sheer stupidity of what went down. If you're looking for a dramatic romance or a high-speed chase, click away. This is about spreadsheets, loading docks, and the sweet, icy taste of revenge served at room temperature in a conference room. It started on a Tuesday, the kind of Tuesday that feels like it's actively trying to drain the life out of you. I worked, as a senior inventory analyst for a mid-sized logistics company dealing in high-end architectural hardware. Think smart faucets that cost more than your first car and door handles that look like modern art. My job was boring to most people. I looked at numbers in column A, compared them to numbers in column B, and if they didn't match, I figured out why. I liked it. It was quiet. It was logical. Numbers don't have egos. Numbers don't interrupt you in meetings to talk about their weekend CrossFit gains. But apparently, my preference for silence was a culture killer. The company, let's call it Lux Fixtures, prided itself on having a work hard, play hard culture. You know the type. Open plan office, ping pong table that nobody actually uses but looks good on the website, and a mandatory happy hour every Friday at 4 p.m. where attendance wasn't officially required but was socially mandatory. I didn't fit in. I'm a guy who comes in at 8:30, puts on noise-canceling headphones, does his work, eats a sandwich in his car to decompress, and leaves at 5 o'clock. I'm polite. I say good morning, I hold doors open, I refill the coffee pot if I take the last cup. But I don't gossip, and I don't participate in the roasting sessions the sales team loved so much. The antagonists of this story are the Golden Trio. First, there was Brad. Brad was the regional sales director. He was 35 going on a frat boy, the kind of guy who peaked in college and was trying to recreate his glory days in a corporate office. He had a voice that carried through soundproof glass and a laugh that sounded like a donkey choking on a kazoo. Second was Jessica. She was the operations manager. Jessica was the queen bee. She was sweet to your face in a way that made your teeth hurt, but you knew she was screenshotting your Slack messages to send to her group chat. She was obsessed with office vibes and cultural fit. Third was Tyler. Tyler was the warehouse lead. He was Brad's lapdog. If Brad thought something was funny, Tyler was on the floor dying of laughter. If Brad thought someone was a loser, Tyler was ready to stuff them in a locker. They hated me. Not because I was bad at my job, I was excellent at my job, but because I was a mirror they didn't like looking into. My silence made them uncomfortable. The inciting incident for the specific harassment that led to their downfall happened during one of those mandatory Friday happy hours. I was standing near the edge of the break room, nursing a sparkling water because I don't drink with coworkers. I was checking my watch, calculating the exact minute I could leave without looking rude. Brad sauntered over, already 3 beers deep. He slapped my back hard enough to make me stumble forward. "Earth to Arthur," he shouted, drawing the attention of half the room. "You still with us, buddy? Or are you calculating digits of pi in that big brain of yours?" Jessica giggled, leaning against the counter. "Leave him alone, Brad. He's probably analyzing the structural integrity of his plastic cup. You know how he gets. So intense." "I'm just chilling, Brad," I said, keeping my voice level. "Long week." "It's a long week for everyone, bro," Tyler chimed in, popping a pretzel into his mouth. "But the rest of us actually talk to each other. You act like you're CIA or something. It's weird, man. It creeps people out." "It's true," Jessica added, her voice dropping to that fake concerned whisper. "I've had a few of the new interns ask why you never speak. They think you hate them. It's bad for morale, Arthur. We're a family here. You're like the weird uncle we keep in the attic." The room laughed. It wasn't a good-natured laugh. It was that sharp exclusionary laugh that separates the hunters from the prey. "I'm just quiet," I said. "I do my work." "That's the problem," Brad sneered, his smile dropping. "You're just work. You're a robot. You bring nothing to the table socially. Honestly, man to man, it's a drag having you around. You suck the energy out of the room." He leaned in close, his breath smelling of cheap hops. "If you want to survive here long-term, you need to loosen up. Stop acting like you're better than us just because you can use Excel." They walked away, high-fiving. I stood there, clutching my sparkling water, feeling the heat rise up my neck. I wasn't angry that they insulted me. I was used to that. I was angry because they were right about one thing: I was better than them. Not because I could use Excel, but because I actually paid attention. And because I paid attention, I noticed the variance. It started small. 2 weeks after the happy hour incident, I was reconciling the Q3 inventory for our smart home division. This was our premium line: thermostats, smart locks, biometric handles. High value, small box size. The perfect target for theft, theoretically, but our security was tight. We had cameras, badge access, and a 3-step verification process for shipping. I was running a routine VLOOKUP between our ERP system, enterprise resource planning, and the physical cycle count data Tyler's team had submitted. Everything looked green. 99.8% accuracy. That's a number that usually makes executives pop champagne. But I saw a discrepancy in the damaged/write-off category. Usually, write-offs are random. A forklift drops a pallet, a box gets crushed in transit, a water pipe bursts. It's chaotic. But looking at the data for September, the write-offs followed a pattern. Every Friday between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m., exactly 3 units of the LuxSecure biometric lock, retail price, $899 each, were marked as damaged in warehouse discarded. 3 units. Every Friday. For 6 weeks. That's $16,000 worth of locks in a month and a half. Now, coincidences happen. Maybe there was a shelf that was wobbly. Maybe there was a clumsy new hire working that shift. But consistency in chaos is a red flag. Nature isn't that organized. I pulled up the digital logs. The user authorizing the write-offs was Tyler. The manager approving the disposal was Jessica. I sat back in my chair. This was weird, but not necessarily nefarious. Maybe they were cleaning out a bad batch? I checked the lot numbers. They were from different manufacturing batches. So it wasn't a defect recall. I decided to walk down to the warehouse. The warehouse was Tyler's domain. It was a cavernous space filled with racking and the beep-beep-beep of forklifts. I put on my safety vest and walked the grid. I didn't head straight for the smart locks. I walked the perimeter, checking labels, looking like I was doing a standard spot check. When I got to aisle 14, where the locks were stored, I saw Tyler. He was on a forklift, but he wasn't moving pallets. He was parked, chatting with Brad. This was odd. Brad was sales. He rarely came down to the floor unless he was showing off the facility to a client. There were no clients today. I ducked behind a stack of ceramic sinks. I know. It sounds cliché. But I wasn't trying to be a spy. I just didn't want another lecture about how my aura was depressing the forklift drivers. The buyer is pushing for the drop this week, Brad was saying. His voice echoed slightly. He wants the pro models. I can't do the pros yet, Tyler replied, his voice lower. Inventory is too hot. Arthur has been asking about the cycle counts on the shower heads. If I zero out the pros now, it'll flag. My heart stopped. Then it restarted at double speed. They weren't talking about sales. They were talking about inventory manipulation. Arthur is a mute idiot, Brad scoffed. He stares at spreadsheets all day but he doesn't see anything. He's just looking for rounding errors. Just mark them as water damage. We had that leak in the roof last month, remember? We can milk that excuse for another quarter. Jessica is nervous, Tyler said. She says the variance report is getting too big. I handle Jessica, Brad said, and there was a gross, arrogant implication in his tone. Just get the boxes in the van during the happy hour distraction. Everyone is upstairs drinking. The dock is a ghost town. Happy hour. That's why the write-offs were on Fridays between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock. While the entire company was upstairs playing beer pong and making fun of me for being antisocial, they were loading high-end electronics into a personal vehicle. I waited until they left, then I slipped back upstairs. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a sudden icy clarity. They thought I was stupid. They thought I was too quiet to notice. They thought my lack of social babble meant a lack of intelligence. They were about to learn that the quiet ones are the ones who hear everything. I didn't go to HR. Not yet. Jessica was friends with the HR director. They did spin class together. If I went to HR now with just a suspicion and overheard conversation, Jessica would spin it. She'd say I was paranoid, vindictive, trying to get back at them for the teasing. She'd say I was misinterpreting standard inventory adjustments. I'd be the one labeled toxic. I'd be managed out within a month. I needed proof. Hard, undeniable, ironclad proof. I initiated what I called Project Silent Night. Step 1 was data aggregation. I stopped doing my normal work, or rather, I automated my normal work using Python scripts so I could finish my daily tasks in an hour, and spent the rest of the day digging through the archives. I went back 2 years. The pattern was unmistakable. It started small. A faucet here, a handle there. Then, about 6 months ago, it ramped up. The happy hour heist pattern emerged. I built a spreadsheet. A massive, beautiful, deadly spreadsheet. Column A, date. Column B, item. Column C, value. Column D, the excuse used for the write-off. Column E, the timestamp. Column F, the cross-reference to Brad's client meetings. I found that every time a large batch of inventory broke, Brad was supposedly out of the office, yet his keycard badge swiped him into the building's rear entrance near the loading dock. Step 2 was the visual confirmation. Our warehouse cameras were decent, but there were blind spots. Aisle 14 had a camera, but it had been malfunctioning intermittently for months. I checked the IT tickets. Tyler had reported the camera broken 4 times. IT would fix it, and a week later, it would go offline again. I couldn't fix the camera without tipping them off. But I was the administrator for the inventory scanners. The handheld scanners the warehouse guys use have GPS and timestamp logging. They track exactly where an item is scanned and when. On Friday morning, I went down to the server room. I pulled the logs for the specific scanners assigned to Tyler. I noticed something interesting. On Fridays, Tyler didn't use his usual scanner. He used a spare scanner, unit number 44, which was usually kept in the reserve cage. I located unit number 44. It was sitting in its cradle. I took it back to my desk and did something technically not allowed but morally necessary. I tweaked the settings. I set it to debug mode, which forces the scanner to log a keystroke history and keeps the Wi-Fi radio active even when the screen is off. Then I put it back. Friday afternoon arrived. The happy hour email went out. Beer and tacos. 3 p.m. I sat at my desk. The office emptied out. The music started pumping from the break room down the hall. I could hear Brad's donkey laugh. I opened the remote terminal for scanner number 44. 3:15 p.m. Scanner activated. 3:18 p.m. Scanned item number 8842, Luxecure lock. Status change, damaged. 3:19 p.m. Scanned item number 8842. Status change, damaged. 3:20 p.m. Scanned item number 8842. Status change, damaged. They were doing it. Right now. But I needed to see the van Brad had mentioned. My office window faced the parking lot, but the loading dock was around the back. However, the fire exit for the stairwell had a view of the rear apron. I grabbed my phone. I walked to the stairwell, moving silently. I didn't take the elevator. I walked down 2 flights and cracked the fire door. There it was. A white Ford Transit van, unmarked. It wasn't one of our fleet vehicles. It was backed up to Bay 4. The bay door was only open about 3 feet, just enough to slide boxes under. I saw Tyler. He was sliding boxes of locks under the door. I saw Brad. He was inside the van, stacking them. I saw Jessica. She wasn't loading, but she was standing by the keypad of the bay door, holding a clipboard, looking around nervously. She was the lookout. I raised my phone. I didn't take a photo. Photos can be grainy. I switched to 4K video. I recorded for 3 minutes. I got their faces. I got the license plate of the van. I got the boxes with the Lux Fixtures logo clearly visible. I got Brad laughing and high-fiving Tyler after the last box was loaded. That's a wrap, boys. Brad said, his voice carrying in the empty alley. Drinks are on the company, literally. They closed the van. They closed the bay door. I retreated to the stairwell, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I had them. But the story doesn't end there. Because getting the evidence is one thing. Delivering it without destroying yourself is another. I returned to my desk and backed up the video to 3 different cloud servers. I encrypted the files. Then, I waited. The following Monday, the atmosphere in the office was toxic. Apparently, sales numbers were down, probably because the director was focusing on theft rather than selling, and Brad was on a rampage. He stopped by my desk at 10 a.m. "Arthur," he barked. "Why haven't you updated the projections for Q4? "I'm working on the data validation, Brad," I said, not looking up. "Data validation," he mocked. "You and your data. You know, I was talking to the VP this morning. We're thinking about restructuring the analyst team. We need people who are dynamic. People who drive business, not just count beans." He was threatening to fire me. He sensed I was a bottleneck, or maybe he just wanted to bring in someone dumber who wouldn't ask questions about the inventory. "I appreciate the feedback," I said monotonously. "Don't give me that robot crap." He slammed his hand on my desk. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." I looked up. I looked him dead in the eyes. And for the first time, I allowed myself a tiny microscopic smile. "I hear you, Brad. I'm very focused on the numbers right now. They're very revealing." He frowned, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. Whatever. Just get it done. He walked away, but I saw him look back twice. He was spooked. Paranoid criminals are dangerous, but they also make mistakes. I had a decision to make. Who do I trust? My direct manager was useless. He was a nice guy but terrified of Brad. The VP of operations was Jessica's mentor. I had to go to the top. The CEO. The CEO, Mr. Henderson, was an old-school guy. He started the company in his garage. He visited the office maybe once a month. He hated waste, and he hated liars. I checked his calendar. Admin privileges are amazing. He was scheduled to be in the office on Thursday for a quarterly board prep. I spent Tuesday and Wednesday compiling the binder of doom. I printed the spreadsheets. I highlighted the variances. I printed the timestamp logs from the scanner. I printed the chat logs I had recovered from a localized backup of Jessica's work laptop. She never logged out, and shared folders are a security nightmare. And I put the video on a USB drive. Thursday came. The office was buzzing because the big boss was in town. Everyone was on their best behavior. Brad was wearing a suit, looking like a used car salesman trying to sell a lemon to a nun. Jessica was fluttering around with coffee trays. I waited until lunch. Mr. Henderson usually ate a salad in the conference room alone while reading the Wall Street Journal. I walked up to the glass door. Brad intercepted me. "Whoa, whoa, Space Cadet," Brad stepped in front of me. "Where do you think you're going?" "I have a report for Mr. Henderson," I said, holding the binder. "Give it to me. I'll run it by him." "It's confidential." Brad laughed. "Confidential? You're an analyst. Nothing you do is confidential. Give me the damn binder, Arthur." He reached for it. I pulled it back. No. The office went silent. The quiet guy had just said no to the alpha male. Brad's face turned red. "Excuse me? You want to be insubordinate? I can fire you right now. Give me the binder or pack your shit." Jessica appeared, sensing the tension. "Arthur, don't cause a scene. Just hand it over." "Is there a problem here?" The voice was gravelly. Mr. Henderson was standing in the doorway of the conference room. Brad immediately switched masks. "No problem, sir. Arthur here was just confused about the chain of command. I was trying to help him prioritize. I have evidence of massive internal theft involving Brad, Jessica, and Tyler," I said. I didn't shout it. I said it with the same tone I used to order a turkey sandwich. The silence that followed was heavy. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the break room. Brad's face went white, then purple. "That's a lie. He's crazy. I told you he was weird, sir. He's having some kind of mental break." Mr. Henderson looked at Brad, then at me. He looked at the thick binder in my hand. "Come inside, Arthur," Henderson said. "Sir, you can't be serious," Jessica squeaked. He's unstable." "If he's lying, he's fired," Henderson said calmly. "If he's not, well, come in." I walked into the conference room. Brad tried to follow. "Alone," Henderson said. He shut the door in Brad's face. I sat down. I opened the binder. "This better be good, son," Henderson said. "You just accused my top sales director of a felony." "It's not a felony, sir," I corrected him. "It's a series of felonies. Grand larceny, conspiracy, falsifying corporate records." I walked him through it. Page 1, the write-off pattern. Page 5, the scanner logs showing Tyler manipulating the inventory. Page 10, the gate logs showing Brad's badge usage. Page 15, the financial impact analysis. Total estimated loss over 18 months, $540,000. Henderson was flipping through the pages, his face growing harder with every turn. He stopped at the total. $500,000, he whispered. "And finally," I said, pulling out the USB drive and plugging it into the TV screen on the wall. "The happy hour heist." I played the video. We watched in silence as Brad, Tyler, and Jessica stole the company blind. The audio was crisp. "Drinks are on the company, literally." Henderson paused the video on the frame of Brad laughing. He stared at it for a long time. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. I treated them like my own kids, Henderson said softly. I paid for Brad's wedding. I gave Jessica that promotion when she wasn't ready because I believed in her. He looked at me. Why didn't you come forward sooner? I needed to be sure, I said. And they made it difficult. They isolated me. They told everyone I was incompetent and weird. I knew if I came to you with anything less than this, I gestured to the binder, they would talk their way out of it and bury me. Henderson nodded. You're the quiet one, right? The one they joke about. Yes, sir. Well, Henderson stood up. Let's make some noise. He picked up the conference room phone. He didn't call the police. He called the general counsel, the head lawyer, and the head of corporate security. Get down here. Now. Bring the termination papers. And bring the NDA waivers. 10 minutes later, the legal team arrived. They reviewed the evidence in stunned silence. Then, the show began. Henderson opened the conference room door. Brad. Jessica. Tyler. Get in here. They walked in, looking smug but nervous. Brad was already regaining his confidence. Sir, look, Brad started. I don't know what Arthur showed you, but the guy has a vendetta. He's antisocial, he's... Shut up, Henderson said. It wasn't a shout. It was a command. He turned the laptop monitor around so they could see the frozen image of themselves loading the van. The color didn't just drain from their faces, it vanished. Tyler looked like he was going to vomit. Jessica put a hand over her mouth. Brad just froze, his mouth half open. I have the logs, the lawyer said, tapping the binder. I have the scanner data. I have the emails you thought you deleted. This is... Brad stammered. This is a misunderstanding. We were moving that stock to a secondary storage unit because... Stop, Henderson said. Just stop. You're insulting my intelligence. We checked the GPS of the van, Brad. We know it went to a storage locker rented in your wife's name. We're sending a team there now to recover the property. We can fix this, Jessica cried, tears flowing instantly. I'm sorry. Brad made me do it. He said it was just surplus. He said nobody would miss it. You threw me under the bus? Brad roared, turning on her. You were the one who cooked the books, you witch. You set up the write-off codes. Because you threatened me. I did what I was told. Tyler yelled. I just drive the forklift. They were eating each other alive. It was glorious. I sat in the corner, invisible again, watching the work family disintegrate into a pit of vipers. Henderson silenced them. Here is what is going to happen. You are all terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you to your desks to collect your keys and wallet. You will not touch your computers. You will not touch your phones. You will sign these admission of guilt forms in exchange for us not pressing immediate criminal charges today. We will handle this civilly to recover the funds. If you fight this, if you badmouth this company, or if I see your face near this building again, I will hand this binder to the district attorney and you will go to prison. They signed. They had no choice. The walk of shame was legendary. The entire office watched as the Golden Trio was marched out by security guards. Brad was red-faced and swearing. Jessica was sobbing loudly. Tyler looked at the floor. I stayed in the conference room with Henderson. You saved this company a lot of money, Arthur, he said. And you saved me from keeping snakes in my backyard. Just doing my job, sir. No, you did more than that. He looked at the empty chairs. I'm cleaning house. We need a new director of operations. Someone who pays attention to details. Someone who doesn't need to be the center of attention. He offered me the job. A massive promotion. A massive raise. I turned it down. I appreciate it, Mr. Henderson, I said. But the culture here, it's rot. Even with them gone, the people out there watched me get bullied for 2 years and laughed. They're only quiet now because they're scared. I can't lead people who don't respect me. He understood. We negotiated a severance package that would make your head spin. 2 years' salary, full benefits, and a glowing recommendation letter that basically says I'm the smartest person they ever hired. Plus, he let me keep the laptop, after IT wiped the sensitive data, of course. I walked out of that office an hour later with my box of personal items. As I passed the sales pit, it was dead silent. Nobody made a joke. Nobody called me the ghost. They just watched me leave, terrified of what I knew, terrified of who was next on my spreadsheet. The aftermath: Brad's wife divorced him when the lawsuit for the money hit their assets. He's currently working at a car dealership 3 towns over. Jessica moved back in with her parents. Her reputation in the industry is torched. Tyler cooperated fully with the asset recovery and got off light, but he's banned from working in logistics in the state. As for me, I took 6 months off. I traveled. I read books. I didn't speak to a single soul unless I wanted to. I start a new job next Monday. It's a remote position for a data security firm. Just me, my cat, and the numbers. The moral of the story? Be careful who you call too quiet. We're not quiet because we have nothing to say. We're quiet because we're listening to you dig your own grave. And usually, we're keeping the receipts. Update 1. Answering questions and the missing inventory. I didn't expect this post to blow up the way it did. A lot of you are asking for more technical details on how they moved the product and how I caught the specific phantom shipments. Also, people are asking about the culture of the office and why I stayed so long if it was that bad. Let's address the why stay question first. Honestly, the pay was good, and I'm stubborn. Leaving felt like letting them win. Plus, I have a mortgage and a sick mother I help support. I couldn't just rage quit because Chad and Karen were mean to me. In the corporate world, you eat a certain amount of dirt just to keep the lights on. I compartmentalized. I treated the office like a zoo. I was just observing the animals. Now, to the mechanics of the theft. This is for the fellow supply chain nerds out there. The scheme was actually brilliant in its simplicity, which is why it worked for so long. They exploited a loophole in our RMA, Return Merchandise Authorization process. When a customer returns a broken item, it comes back to the warehouse. We inspect it. If it's truly broken, we trash it, right off. If it's fixable, we refurbish it. Brad created fake customer accounts. He would sell 50 units to a shell company. Then, he would immediately issue an RMA for 10 of those units, claiming they arrived smashed. Tyler would receive the return in the system, but no physical box ever came back. He would simply take 10 new units off the shelf, mark them as the returned broken units, and then mark them for disposal. So the system thought. We sold 50. 10 came back broken. We threw away the 10 broken ones. In reality, we sold 50 to Brad's shell company, likely at a discount or never paid for. Accounts receivable was another mess I didn't touch. Tyler took 10 brand new units from the shelf. Instead of throwing them in the crusher, they went into the white van. The inventory count remained accurate, because the system expected those 10 units to be gone. They were accounted for as trash. The flaw in their plan? Weight. We pay for shipping by weight. When I was doing my deep dive, I looked at the shipping manifests for the waste disposal company that collects our crushed electronics. We pay them by the ton. If we were throwing away hundreds of heavy brass locks and smart systems, our waste disposal fees should have spiked. They didn't. The weight of the trash leaving the facility was consistently lower than the weight of the items we were supposedly throwing away. I cross-referenced the disposal weight tickets with the write-off volume. According to Jessica's reports, we threw away 4,000 pounds of metal in October. According to the waste management invoices, they only hauled 1,200 pounds of trash. 2,800 pounds of trash was missing. That 2,800 pounds was sitting in Brad's storage locker. When I presented this specific data point to Henderson in the conference room, that was the nail in the coffin. You can fake a spreadsheet. You can't fake a third-party weigh station ticket from a garbage truck. A note on Jessica. A few people commented that I seemed hard on Jessica. She was just caught in the middle. No. Jessica was the architect of the emotional abuse. Brad was a brute, but Jessica was a sniper. I found an email thread between her and Brad from 6 months ago. Subject: The Ghost Problem. Jessica wrote, Arthur is sniffing around the Q2 variances. He asked me about the disposal weights today. I told him it was a calibration error on the truck scales, but he gave me that blank stare. We need to rattle him. Make him feel unwelcome. If he's stressed, he'll make mistakes or leave. I'm going to start a rumor that he's being investigated for incompetence. Let's isolate him at the happy hours. Make him feel like a pariah." She didn't just join in, she orchestrated the bullying as a tactical defense mechanism for their theft. She weaponized the social hierarchy of the office to protect her crime ring. That's why I felt zero guilt when she started crying. Those weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of a predator realizing the trap had snapped shut on her leg. The confrontation. Extended cut. I left out a few details of the confrontation for brevity, but since you guys want the tea, here's what happened immediately after the legal team walked in. Brad tried the bro code approach with Henderson. "Mr. Henderson, come on. It's me, Brad. I've hit quota 5 years running. I brought in the Metro account. You're going to throw that away over a few misplaced boxes." Henderson looked at him with pure disgust. "You stole from my family, Brad. And not only that, you compromised our ISO certification. Do you know what happens if the auditors see these fake logs? We lose our license to bid on government contracts. That's 40% of our revenue. You didn't just steal a few boxes. You tried to sink the ship." Then Tyler cracked. Tyler was always a follower. When the lawyers put the admission of guilt document in front of him, he started shaking. "If I sign this, do I go to jail?" he asked, his voice trembling. The general counsel looked at him over his glasses. "If you sign this, and return the assets, we agree not to pursue criminal charges for theft. However, we are not protecting you from the IRS. You didn't pay taxes on this income, did you?" Tyler put his head on the table and sobbed. It was pathetic. It was tragic. And it was necessary. "I'm currently packing for a trip to Japan. I've always wanted to go. It's a quiet culture. I think I'll fit in just fine. To the people asking if I'm single, yes, but I'm married to my peace and quiet right now." Update 2, the fallout and the new guy. It's been 3 months since the purge at Lux Fixtures. I still have a few contacts there, junior analysts who didn't treat me like garbage, and they've been filling me in on the aftermath. The culture shifted hard. Mr. Henderson came out of semi-retirement to run the ship until they found a new director. He implemented a zero-tolerance policy for clique behavior. The happy hours were cancelled. The open plan office was rearranged to give people more privacy, ironically, what I always wanted. But here is the kicker, they hired my replacement. His name is Kevin. According to my source, Kevin is loud. Kevin loves to talk. Kevin organizes the Fantasy Football League. Kevin is the life of the party. And Kevin is apparently terrible at the job. He missed a $40,000 variance in his first month because he was too busy planning a Taco Tuesday event. My source told me that during a management meeting, Mr. Henderson slammed his fist on the table and shouted, "Where's Arthur? I want the quiet guy back. I want someone who reads the damn spreadsheets." It gave me a warm, fuzzy feeling to hear that. Valuation is often only realized in absence. They didn't know what they had until they replaced me with the personality type they thought they wanted. I also received a letter from Brad's lawyer. It was a cease and desist regarding this Reddit post, or what they assume is my Reddit post. I changed the names and industry details enough to be legally safe. Nice try, Brad. He's trying to sue me for defamation. I forwarded it to Mr. Henderson's general counsel with a smiley face emoji. The general counsel replied, "Disregard." We reminded Brad's counsel about the evidence we are still holding in escrow. He won't bother you again. Having a corporate legal team as your personal pit bull is a nice perk of the exit package. Reflections on quiet people. I want to end this saga with a thought for anyone else out there who is the Arthur of their office. There is a pressure in modern society to be an extrovert. To be on. To perform. If you aren't broadcasting your life, people assume you don't have one. If you aren't loud, people assume you are weak. But there is power in silence. Observation is a superpower. While they are talking, you are learning. While they are posturing, you are planning. While they are stealing, you are recording. Don't let them force you to change. You don't need to be the loudest voice in the room to be the most dangerous person in the room. Stay quiet. Stay watching. And keep your backups encrypted. Arthur, signing off. Author's note: The specific technical details of the inventory manipulation regarding the weight discrepancy were inspired by a real forensic accounting case I read about years ago, adapted here for the narrative. The weight never lies principle is a golden rule in logistics fraud detection. Final addendum: the encounter. I didn't think I'd have anything else to add, but something happened yesterday that feels like the universe tying a bow on this whole mess. I was at the grocery store, specifically in the cereal aisle, debating between granola and something with too much sugar. I turned the corner and ran smack into Jessica. She looked different. Gone were the designer blazers and the perfectly coiffed hair. She was wearing sweatpants and a hoodie. She looked tired. She had a cart full of generic brands. We locked eyes. For a second, I saw the old Jessica flare up, the sneer, the instinct to belittle. But it died instantly. She looked at my cart: high-end steak, good wine, expensive coffee. I'm treating myself. Then she looked at hers. "Arthur," she said. Her voice was raspy. "Jessica," I nodded. "I heard you're doing well," she said. It sounded bitter, but resigned. "I am. You ruined my life, you know," she said. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. I can't get a reference. I lost my condo. I looked at her. I thought about feeling sorry for her. I really tried to find that scrap of empathy. But then I remembered the lunchroom. I remembered her telling the interns I was a school shooter risk, just because I was quiet. I remembered the text messages she sent Brad about breaking me mentally. "I didn't ruin your life, Jessica," I said calmly. "I just turned on the lights. You were the one standing in the dark holding the stolen goods." She didn't have a comeback. She just stared at me. "Have a good day," I said. I walked past her. I didn't look back. I paid for my groceries. I walked out to my car. The sun was shining. It was a beautiful, quiet day. And for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt like victory. To fool by destroying my brother-in-law's ego? No. I exposed his life, and now my family is imploding. Throwaway for obvious reasons. I never wanted to be the guy who nuked his own family. I like peace. I like my quiet life. I teach history at a public high school. I drive a 2016 Honda Civic that smells faintly of old coffee, and I rent a decent apartment in a part of town that is safe but definitely not trendy. I am content. Or I was, until my brother-in-law, Greg, decided that my contentment was a personal insult to his existence. You know the type. Greg is 34, works in consulting, a term he uses like a majestic title, wears suits that cost more than my first car, and treats every conversation like a negotiation he needs to win. He married my sister, Sarah, 5 years ago. Since then, he has systematically dismantled her personality and replaced it with a nervous, high-maintenance shadow of the woman I grew up with. The breaking point didn't happen all at once. It was a slow burn of snide comments and passive-aggressive jabs, culminating in last Saturday's dinner. But to understand why I did what I did, you need to understand the dynamic. Greg makes money. A lot of it. Or at least, that is the brand he sells. He drives a Porsche Cayenne. They live in a gated community. Sarah doesn't work anymore because Greg insisted it looked bad for his image if his wife had a standard 9 to 5. So she manages the house, plans the galas, and looks exhausted. I am the charity case at the table. That is how Greg introduces me. Not "This is Sarah's brother Mark the teacher," but "This is Mark, he's in public education," said with the same tone one might use to say, "He has a contagious skin rash." Last Saturday was Greg's birthday. He chose a steakhouse where the menu didn't have prices, just vibes. The lighting was dim, the leather was real, and the waiters looked like they judged your credit score before pouring water. It was me, our parents, who are retired and terrified of offending Greg because he manages their retirement portfolio, Sarah, and Greg. I ordered the chicken. Not because I'm cheap, though I am budget conscious, but because I actually like roasted chicken. Greg looked at my menu choice, then looked at the waiter, then looked back at me with a theatrical sigh. "Mark," he said, loud enough for the table next to us to turn their heads. "It is my birthday. Stop counting pennies. Order a steak. I'm paying, obviously. I know an educator's salary barely covers rent these days." "I like the chicken, Greg," I said, keeping my voice level. "It comes with truffle mash." "It comes with a poverty mindset," Greg laughed. It was a sharp, barking sound. He turned to my father. You hear that, Bill? Poverty mindset. That is why he's stuck. You have to eat like a winner to think like a winner. My dad chuckled nervously. Well, Mark's always been frugal. There is frugal, and then there is sad, Greg said, taking a sip of his $50 whiskey. You know, Mark, I could probably get you an interview at the firm. We need guys for the mailroom or data entry. Even that would double your salary. You could finally trade in that Honda. It's embarrassing, Sarah, honestly. When you park in our driveway, the neighbors probably think we hired a discount plumber. Sarah looked down at her lap. Greg, stop. The car is fine. It's not fine, babe. It's a signal, Greg lectured, pointing a steak knife at me. It signals that you settle. I don't settle. That's why I'm flying to Miami on Monday for the crypto summit. That's why I'm closing deals while Mark here is grading papers on the Industrial Revolution. I make the revolution, he reads about it. I gripped my fork. This was the routine. He mocks me, I take it for Sarah's sake, we go home. But something about the discount plumber comment stuck in my throat. I looked at Sarah. She looked miserable. She had dark circles under her eyes covered by thick concealer. She was wearing a diamond necklace he'd bought her, but she looked like she was wearing a shackle. So, Miami again? I asked. You were just in Vegas last week, right? And New York before that. Greg puffed out his chest. High demand, Mark. The market never sleeps. I have clients who need face-to-face reassurance. It's a grind, but someone has to fund this lifestyle. He gestured vaguely at Sarah, as if she were an expensive pet he was maintaining. I'm closing a merger in South Beach. Top-tier stuff. You wouldn't understand the liquidity involved. Right, I said. Liquidity. The dinner ended with Greg making a show of tipping the waiter. He held the cash up, made sure we all saw the hundreds, and dropped them on the table like he was bestowing a blessing. Study hard, Mark, he said as we walked to the valet. Maybe one day you can afford the appetizer. I drove home in my discount plumber car, fuming. But beneath the anger, my historian brain was ticking. I deal in facts, timelines, and evidence. And something about Greg's timeline didn't fit. 2 months ago, Greg claimed he was in London for a week. He posted a photo of a pint of beer with the caption London Calling. But I noticed the outlet on the wall in the background of the photo. It was a standard American Type B socket, not the British Type G. I didn't say anything then because I thought maybe he was in an American-style hotel or I was just seeing things. But then there was the Vegas trip last week. He claimed he was at the Bellagio. He sent a text to the family group chat complaining about the heat. 105 degrees and dry as a bone, he wrote. I checked the weather in Las Vegas for that day. It was raining and 65 degrees. A freak cold front. Greg was lying. I didn't know why. Was it an affair? That was the classic answer. Rich guy, traveling constantly, wife at home, it fits. But Greg was lazy. An affair takes effort. An affair takes emotional bandwidth. Greg's only emotional investment was in his own reflection. I decided to dig. Not for revenge, I told myself, but for Sarah. If he was cheating, she needed to know. I started with the easiest source of information, social media. Greg blocked me on Instagram 6 months ago because I didn't engage with his brand enough, but he didn't block my burner account I used to monitor trends for my students. I scrolled back. Miami. London. New York. Tokyo. He checked in everywhere. Grinding. Hustling. Closing. I looked closer at the Tokyo picture from 3 months ago. It was a plate of sushi. High quality. But in the corner of the frame, resting on the table, was a napkin. It was blurry, but the logo was blue. It looked like a stylized fish. I cropped it, enhanced it, and ran a reverse image search on the logo. It wasn't a high-end Tokyo omakase bar. It was Captain Krabby's Seafood Shack. In Atlantic City, New Jersey. My heart started hammering. He wasn't in Tokyo. He was in New Jersey. I went back to the London photo. I zoomed in on the beer glass. It wasn't a pint. It was a standard American shaker pint. And the label on the bottle behind it? Yangling. You can get Yingling many places, but it's an American lager. It's not exactly the pride of London pubs. Why lie about the location? If he was having an affair, why pretend to be in Tokyo when you are in Atlantic City? Why pretend to be in Miami when you are... Well, I had to find out where he actually was for this Miami trip. Monday came. Greg had made a big show of his 6 a.m. flight. Sarah posted a picture of him with his Tumi luggage, hubby off to conquer Miami. So proud. I called the school and used a personal day. I had to know. I drove to their gated community and parked down the street, hidden by a large oak tree. I felt ridiculous. I felt like a stalker. But I knew his pattern. He usually took an Uber to the airport to save on parking, or so he said. At 5:15 a.m., an Uber pulled up. Greg came out. He loaded his bags. He got in. I waited for them to turn the corner, then I followed. We didn't go to the airport. We went 20 miles south. To a mid-range casino hotel on the outskirts of the city. The kind of place that smells like stale cigarettes and desperation, where the carpet patterns are designed to keep you awake and the buffet is $19.99. Greg got out. He didn't check in. He walked straight to the parking garage. He went to the 3rd floor. He pulled a set of keys out of his pocket, keys I had never seen before, and unlocked a beat-up 2010 Ford Taurus. I watched from my car, stunned. He opened the trunk of the Taurus. He took off his suit jacket. He took off his tie. He swapped his dress shirt for a stained polo shirt. He put on a baseball cap. He left the Tumi luggage in the trunk of the Taurus and took out a gym bag. Then, he walked back into the casino. He wasn't meeting clients. He wasn't closing mergers. He was gambling. I sat there for 4 hours. I watched him. He sat at a blackjack table. I saw him lose hand after hand. I saw him go to the ATM. I saw him come back. He wasn't the arrogant master of the universe Greg here. He was sweaty. He was shaking. He looked aged. I took photos. I took videos. I documented everything. Then I went home and did the math. If he was doing this every trip, he was hemorrhaging money. The flights, the hotels, the client dinners. It was all a fabrication to cover for days spent bleeding cash at mediocre casinos. But where was the money coming from? My parents. He managed their retirement. A cold dread washed over me. I logged into my parents' portal. They had given me access years ago in case of emergency. I had never checked it because Greg is a wizard, according to my dad. I looked at the statements. The balance was there. It looked high. But then I looked at the trade confirmations. They were PDFs. I opened one. The font was slightly off. The logo of the brokerage firm was pixelated. I called the brokerage firm directly. "I'm calling to verify an account number," I said. They ran the number on the statement. "I'm sorry, sir," the rep said. "That account was closed 18 months ago." Greg had been forging the statements. My parents' retirement wasn't being managed. It was gone. He had stolen it. All of it. I sat in my apartment, surrounded by printed screenshots and fake bank statements, and I felt like I was going to throw up. It wasn't just mockery. It wasn't just ego. It was grand larceny. It was elder abuse. He had gutted my parents to fund a gambling addiction and a facade of success, all while mocking me for eating chicken. I needed to tell Sarah. But I couldn't just tell her. She was brainwashed. She would deny it. She would say I was jealous. She would warn Greg, and he would run or hide the evidence. I needed to expose him in a way that left no room for spin. I waited for Wednesday. Wednesday was strategy night. Greg usually FaceTimed Sarah from his hotel suite to say goodnight. He posted a photo on Instagram around 6 p.m., South Beach sunset. The grind is beautiful. The photo was a stock image. I found it on Shutterstock in 10 seconds. I texted Sarah. "Can I come over? I need help with something for Mom and Dad." "Greg's away, Mark." "I'm tired," she replied. "It's urgent. Please." I drove over. Sarah looked frail. She let me in, clutching a glass of wine. "What is it?" she asked. "Is Dad okay?" "Dad is physically fine," I said. "But we need to talk about Greg." Her face hardened. Mark, if this is about the steakhouse. It's not about the steakhouse. It's about Miami. And Tokyo. And London. I opened my laptop on her marble kitchen island. Greg is in Miami right now, right? Yes. He has a meeting with the crypto partners. Okay. Look at this. I played the video I took on Monday. Greg, in the stained polo shirt, screaming at a blackjack dealer at the rusty casino 20 miles away. Sarah stared at the screen. That's old. That must be from a bachelor party years ago. Look at the date on the phone in the video, Sarah. Look at the newspaper the guy next to him is holding. It's from Monday. She shook her head. No. He called me. He's at the Fontainebleau. Call him, I said. FaceTime him right now. I can't, he's at a dinner. Call him. She dialed. It rang. And rang. Then he picked up. The camera was angled up, showing only his face and a white ceiling. Hey babe, Greg said. He sounded out of breath. Just stepped out of the meeting. Crushing it. What's up? Show me the room, I said, leaning into the frame. Greg's eyes went wide. Mark? What the hell are you doing at my house? Show us the room, Greg. Show us the view of Miami. I'm not doing this. You're violating my privacy. Sarah, get him out of there. Greg, Sarah's voice trembled. Show me the ocean. It's dark. You can't see anything. Show me the room then. The furniture. Greg hesitated. I'm in the bathroom. The meeting is in the suite. Background noise, I said. I hear a slot machine, Greg. You hear traffic, he shouted. Ding 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 ding, I mimicked. That's a Wheel of Fortune machine. I can hear it. Greg hung up. Sarah looked at me, tears welling up. He's gambling. It's worse, I said. Sit down. I showed her the bank statements. I showed her the email from the brokerage firm confirming the account was closed. I showed her the math. He's not a consultant, Sarah. He hasn't had a client in 2 years. He's been living off your savings and mom and dad's retirement. He's losing it all at local casinos and pretending to travel so you don't see him panic. Sarah turned pale. She ran to the bathroom and threw up. I stood there, feeling no victory. Just a heavy, suffocating sadness. Then the front door slammed open. It was Greg. He hadn't been in Miami. He was 40 minutes away. He must have sped the whole way home. He stormed into the kitchen. He looked deranged. His polo shirt was sweaty, his eyes wild. You little rat, he screamed at me. You jealous, pathetic little rat. He lunged at me. I'm a teacher, but I spent my summers working construction before I got my tenure. I'm not small. I sidestepped him and shoved him back. He tripped over his own feet and crashed into the island. It's over, Greg, I said. I showed her everything. The fake statements. The business trips. The losses. Greg scrambled up, but he didn't attack again. He looked at Sarah. Babe, listen. He's manipulating the data. I'm in a leverage position. The market is down. I had to move assets to liquid holdings to protect them. I'm winning it back. I'm up 10 grand today. You stole my parents' money, Sarah whispered. Her voice was ice. I borrowed it. To invest. I was going to pay them back double. Triple. I'm a visionary, Sarah. You know that. I just need a little more time. The strategy is sound. You called my brother a discount plumber while you were stealing from our father, Sarah said. She stood up. She looked taller than she had in years. Get out. This is my house. Greg roared. Actually, I interjected, looking at a property deed I had pulled up earlier. According to the foreclosure notice I found in the mail pile you hid in the garage. The bank owns this house. You haven't paid the mortgage in 6 months. Greg froze. The air left the room. The facade crumbled completely. He wasn't the Wolf of Wall Street. He was a scared, pathetic man in a stained shirt who had lied to everyone he loved because he was too arrogant to admit he failed. He started crying. Ugly, heaving sobs. Begging Sarah not to leave him, blaming the market, blaming bad luck, blaming me. I did it for us, he wailed. I wanted you to have the best. You did it for your ego, I said. Sarah called the police to have him removed. Not arrested, we didn't want that scene yet, but removed from the property. He went, screaming that I had ruined his life. That was 3 days ago. The fallout is massive. My parents are devastated. They've lost about 70% of their savings. I'm helping them file fraud reports, but it's likely gone. We might have to sell their house and move them into an apartment. Sarah is staying with me. She's shell-shocked. She's finding out about credit cards opened in her name, loans taken out against her jewelry. But this morning, something happened. I was making coffee. Sarah walked into the kitchen. She looked tired, but she was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, not the stiff designer clothes Greg forced her to wear. She looked at the Honda Civic in the driveway. You know, she said, that car is reliable. It gets you where you need to go. It does, I said. I think I'm going to need a job, she said. Maybe the school district is hiring. They always need substitutes, I said. The pay isn't great, though. She smiled. It was a weak smile, but it was real. I don't care about the pay. I just want to earn money that actually exists. I didn't expose Greg to feel big. I didn't do it to win the argument about the steak. I did it because the truth, no matter how ugly, is better than a beautiful lie. Greg is currently staying at a Motel 6. He's texting me threats, then apologies, then investment tips. I blocked him. My dad called me yesterday. He's heartbroken about the money, obviously. But he said something that stuck with me. I'm proud of you, Mark. You saw what was happening when we were all blinded by the flash. I'm still driving my Civic. I'm still eating chicken. But for the first time in 5 years, my family is free. And that's worth more than any steak Greg ever bought. Update 1, the discovery phase. It's been 2 weeks since the night of the Miami lie, as my sister calls it. I thought the initial explosion was the worst of it. I was wrong. The initial explosion was just the demolition. Now we are sifted through the rubble, and we are finding toxic waste everywhere. The response to my original post was overwhelming. Many of you called Greg a narcissist, a sociopath, or just a garden variety addict. I think he's all three, mixed with a profound incompetence that he masked with aggression. Sarah has filed for divorce. That was the easy part. The hard part is the forensic accounting of her life. Since Greg was removed, we've been trying to piece together the financial reality. It is so much worse than I thought. We found a storage unit key in his desk. Greg had always claimed he didn't believe in storage units. If you don't use it, sell it, was his motto. We went to the unit on Saturday. It wasn't full of old furniture. It was full of mail. Bags and bags of unopened mail. IRS notices. Final demand letters. Collections warnings. And unsold inventory. Apparently, 3 years ago, Greg tried to launch a luxury men's grooming line called Alphaglaze. He spent $50,000 of their savings on inventory. It was all there. Rotting boxes of beard oil that smelled like pine sol and regret. He never sold a single unit. He just hid the failure and pretended the money was invested in emerging markets. But the kicker? My parents' money. I sat down with my dad and a lawyer. We traced the transfers. Greg didn't just gamble it. He used my parents' retirement fund to pay the lease on the Porsche. Every time he revved that engine to mock my Civic, he was burning my father's 40 years of labor as a mechanic. When I realized that, I saw red. I mean, legitimate, tunnel vision rage. I wanted to drive to his motel and do something that would definitely make me unhireable as a teacher. Sarah stopped me. He's drowning, Mark, she said. Don't get in the water with him. Greg, meanwhile, has entered the bargaining stage of grief. He sent a 3-page email to my father. Subject line, Strategic Restructuring Proposal/Apology. He didn't say, I'm sorry I stole your money. He said, I regret the liquidity crunch that temporarily displaced your assets. However, I have a roadmap to recover the principal plus 20% within 6 months if you drop the fraud charges and loan me $5,000 for seed capital. My dad printed the email out, walked to the backyard, and burned it in the grill. It was the most cathartic thing I've ever seen him do. The friends react. One of the most satisfying parts of this has been watching Greg's social circle evaporate. These were the guys who laughed at my job. The finance brothers. Sarah logged into Greg's LinkedIn. He left his password on a sticky note, naturally. She posted a status update. Not a rant. Just the facts. Greg is no longer associated with firm name. He has admitted to misappropriating family funds and has been struggling with a severe gambling addiction. We ask for privacy. The phone blew up. But not with support. Greg's partners were calling to make sure their money was safe. When they found out Greg never actually invested their money either, he was running a mini Ponzi scheme with his friends, paying old debts with new investments, they turned on him instantly. One guy, Chad, who once told me my watch was cute, called me. Hey man, look, I know Greg is a scumbag, but he owes me 12 grand. Can you get Sarah to cut a check? Chad, I said. Sarah has $400 in her checking account and a foreclosure notice. You're not getting 12 grand. You're getting a lesson in due diligence. I hung up. It felt amazing. The confrontation at the school. This is the part that shook me. Greg showed up at my school. I was in my classroom, third period, teaching the Great Depression, ironic, I know. The office buzzed me. Mark, your brother-in-law is here. He says it's a family emergency. I knew it wasn't. I told the principal, do not let him in. Call the resource officer. I walked to the front office. Through the glass doors, I saw him. He looked terrible. He hadn't shaved. He was wearing the same suit from the dinner, but it was wrinkled and stained. He saw me and started banging on the glass. Mark. Just talk to me. I have a plan. I just need you to co-sign. The students were watching. The secretaries were terrified. The resource officer, a nice guy named Officer Miller, stepped in. Sir, you need to leave. I need to talk to him. He poisoned my wife against me. Greg screamed. Sir, turn around. Greg looked at me one last time. You're a loser, Mark. You'll always be a loser. You think you won? You destroyed a dynasty. I destroyed a delusion, Greg, I said through the glass. Go get help. He was escorted off the property. I went back to my class. My hands were shaking. One of my students, a kid named Leo who usually sleeps through class, raised his hand. Mr. T, was that the guy? What guy? The guy who said you have a poverty mindset? I may have vented to my homeroom once. Yeah, that was him. Leo nodded. He drives a nice car though. Not anymore, Leo, I said. Not anymore. The path forward. We are moving my parents into the in-law suite at my aunt's house for now. It's tight, but family is family. Sarah got a job. Not at the school, but as a receptionist at a veterinary clinic. She loves it. She comes home smelling like disinfectant and puppy fur, and she looks happier than she ever did smelling like Chanel and Fear. She brought home her first paycheck on Friday. It was for $600. She cried. It's mine, she said. I earned it. He didn't give it to me. We ordered pizza. We sat on the floor of my living room because I don't have a dining table big enough for 4 people. We laughed. We actually laughed. Greg is facing charges. My parents decided to press them. It's hard, but it's necessary. He's looking at real time for fraud and embezzlement. The business trips are over. The only trip he's taking now is to the county courthouse. I still drive my Honda. I still teach history. But I learned a lesson myself. Money is loud. Wealth is quiet. But freedom? Freedom is silence. The silence of no lies, no debts, and no one telling you that your chicken dinner isn't good enough. I'll update if anything major happens with the trial, but for now, we are just breathing. Thanks for reading. Don't let the Gregs of the world make you feel small. They're usually the smallest ones in the room. Update 2. The Trial and the Hidden Safe. It has been 6 months since my last post. I didn't intend to update, but the sheer absurdity of what has unfolded in court, and what we found in the walls of Greg's foreclosed house, deserves to be written down. If only as a warning to anyone dazzled by a shiny suit and a buzzword. First, the legal side. Greg pleaded not guilty. His defense? He claimed he wasn't stealing the money. He claimed he was functioning as an unlicensed hedge fund manager, and that the losses were market volatility, not theft. He tried to argue that my parents verbally authorized him to use their retirement for high-risk, high-reward alternative assets. The alternative asset being primarily the blackjack table at the Lucky Star Casino. I was called to testify. The prosecutor was a sharp woman who seemed to find Greg personally offensive. She put up the timeline I created. Mr. Greg redacted. On October 14th, you claimed to be in Dubai for a blockchain summit. Is that correct? Yes, Greg said. He was wearing a cheap suit now, likely a public defender recommendation to look humble. It didn't work. He looked like a cornered rat in polyester. And yet, the prosecutor clicked a button, displaying a photo on the court screens. Here is a geotagged photo of you eating a chili dog at a gas station in Secaucus, New Jersey, on that same day. Can you explain the discrepancy? I was connecting through New Jersey. Connecting to Dubai via a gas station off the turnpike? It was a layover. The jury actually laughed. But the darkest moment came when they analyzed the investments. Greg hadn't just lost the money. He had spent it on appearances. We found receipts for $4,000 for a gold leaf steak dinner, he went alone. $12,000 for a VIP table at a club, he sat alone, according to witnesses, and paid girls to sit near him for photos. $5,000 for Instagram follower boosting services. He literally burned my father's retirement to make strangers on the internet think he was popular. My dad was in the courtroom. He didn't yell. He just put his head in his hands. That hurt more than any screaming match. The house discovery. While the trial was prepping, the bank was finalizing the foreclosure on Sarah and Greg's McMansion. Sarah had to go back one last time to ensure she hadn't left any personal documents. I went with her. The electricity was cut, so we were using flashlights. The house was spooky. Empty outlines where the rented furniture used to be. We were in Greg's home office, the room where he played Call of Duty while pretending to trade stocks. I bumped into a bookshelf built into the wall. It wobbled. That's loose, I said. I pulled on it. The whole shelving unit swung out. A hidden room. Classic Greg. He probably saw it in a movie. Inside the crawlspace, there was a small fireproof safe. Sarah didn't know the combo. Try his birthday, I said. Didn't work. Try his graduation year. Didn't work. Try. Money typed out on a keypad? 6-6-6-3-9. Click. The man was a caricature of himself. We opened the safe. We expected cash. Maybe some hidden gold. A getaway fund. It was empty of money, but it contained three things. A stack of handwritten journals. A thumb drive. A laminated vision board. The vision board was pathetic. Pictures of Elon Musk, a Bugatti, and me? Yes. There was a picture of me, printed from my Facebook, with a red X drawn over my face. Next to it, written in Sharpie, eliminate the mediocre influence. I stared at it. He was obsessed with me. He was jealous of you, Sarah whispered. You were happy. He couldn't buy that. We took the journals. We shouldn't have read them, but we did. They were the ramblings of a madman. Entry, March 3rd. They don't understand the burden of genius. Sarah asks about the grocery budget. Small minds. I am destined for the cover of Forbes. I just need one big hit on the roulette wheel. Just one. Then I'll buy the island. I'll make Mark mow the lawn on the island. He literally fantasized about making me his gardener. It was funny, in a terrifying way. The thumb drive. We gave the thumb drive to the police. It turns out, Greg wasn't just gambling. He was trying to start a cryptocurrency based on himself. Greg Coin. I am not making this up. He had spent $20,000 paying developers in Ukraine to build a coin where the mining algorithm was based on his own business insights. It never launched because he couldn't pay the server fees. The police added attempted securities fraud to the pile. The verdict. The trial ended last week. Guilty on 12 counts of wire fraud, embezzlement, and grand larceny. The judge was not amused by Greg's closing statement. where he tried to quote The Art of War but accidentally quoted Kung Fu Panda. Sentencing is next month. He's looking at 8 to 12 years. Sarah's recovery. Sarah is doing okay. She's dating a guy named Mike. Mike is a park ranger. He drives a truck that is covered in mud. He wears flannel because he's cold, not because it's fashion. He came to dinner last Sunday. We had meatloaf. Greg would have mocked the meatloaf. Mike asked for seconds. "This is damn good," Mike said. "You make this, Mark?" "Yeah. Respect." Sarah smiled. She touched Mike's arm. She looks younger. The tension in her jaw is gone. She's paying off her own debts, slowly. She refuses to take money from me, even though I offered. "I need to know I can stand," she told me. My parents. This is the hardest part. They are resilient, but they are old. They sold their house. They live in the in-law suite. They lost the dream of the Florida condo. But my dad bought a used fishing boat with a little cash they salvaged. A tiny aluminum dinghy. He took me out on the lake last weekend. We sat there, lines in the water, drinking cheap beer. "You know," Dad said, looking at the bobber. "Greg always talked about yachts. Said he'd buy me a 50-footer. "Yeah. I don't know how to drive a 50-footer, Dad said. "I like this one. I can patch the leaks myself." He looked at me. "You're a good man, Mark. You saved us from losing the rest. You saved your sister." I almost cried. I didn't expose Greg's secret business trips because I hated him, though I did. I did it because you can't build a life on a foundation that doesn't exist. Greg is in a cell, probably telling his cellmate that he's just there for networking. I'm on a lake with my dad. I know who the richer man is. Final thoughts for anyone reading this. If someone makes you feel small for living a normal, honest life, check their pockets. They're usually empty. And if your brother-in-law goes to Miami but comes back with a tan that looks like spray paint and a receipt from a New Jersey diner, follow the Uber. Stay humble, Reddit. And eat the chicken if you like the chicken. Update 3, the letter from prison. I really thought the last update was the end. The credits roll, the bad guy goes to jail, the hero rides off in a Honda Civic. But life isn't a movie, and narcissists don't just disappear when the cell door closes. Greg has been in prison for 3 months. Yesterday, a letter arrived at my school. Not at my home, I moved, specifically to ensure he couldn't find me. At my school. He addressed it to Mr. Mark, last name, History Department. The envelope was stamped with the correctional facility's logo. I sat in the teacher's lounge, holding it like it was radioactive. My colleague, Jen, looked over. "Is that from him?" "Yeah." "Burn it," she said. "I have to know," I said. I opened it. The handwriting was erratic. Scribbled. It wasn't an apology. It was a pitch. "Mark, I have had time to think. The system is broken. The guards here are low IQ individuals who don't understand macroeconomics. But I have found an inefficiency in the commissary market. Cigarettes are out. Ramen is the new gold standard. I have cornered the market on beef flavor in Block C. I need a partner on the outside. Someone to manage the digital wallet. I know we have had our differences. You are risk-averse. I am risk-tolerant. We make a good team. If you deposit $500 into my commissary account, I can triple it in trading stamps within the month. Also, tell Sarah I forgive her for the betrayal. I am willing to take her back when I get out in 2032. She needs a leader. P.S. Sell your car. Buy Copper Futures. You're welcome. Greg. I stared at the letter. He is trading ramen noodles. He is in federal prison, and he is still trying to hustle me. He thinks he cornered the market on soup. I took a picture of the letter and texted it to Sarah. She replied instantly, LOL. Just 3 letters. 3 years ago, this letter would have sent her into a panic attack. Now? She's laughing. I walked to the shredder in the corner of the lounge. I fed the letter in. I watched Greg's business proposal turn into confetti. Jen handed me a coffee. What did it say? Nothing, I said. Just history. The real end. My parents are okay. They've adjusted to the smaller life. They actually seem closer now, united by the survival of the disaster. Sarah and Mike are getting serious. Mike asked me if I wanted to go hiking next week. I hate hiking, but I'm going. Because Mike is a good guy who looks you in the eye and pays with his own debit card. I still have moments where I get angry. I get angry that Greg stole years of my sister's life. I get angry that he made my dad feel small. But then I remember the look on his face when I played that video of the slot machines. The look of a man who realized his magic trick failed. I'm thinking of getting a new car next year. Maybe a Toyota. Something reliable. Greg would hate it. That's why I'll love it. If you are in a situation where someone is mocking your financial status, or making you feel less than because you don't have the flash, ask yourself, what are they hiding? People who actually have it don't need to scream it at a steakhouse. People who are happy don't need to destroy the happiness of others. This is Mark, the history teacher, signing off. I have papers to grade. And a chicken dinner to eat. Note, several people asked about the specifics of how I caught him with the outlet photo in the original post. To clarify, he posted a selfie in a mirror. The reflection showed the wall behind him. I zoomed in on the reflection. The outlet was clearly visible. Always check your backgrounds, folks. Or, just don't lie to your family. End of saga. I never thought a cardboard box would be the catalyst that destroyed my entire life. It sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud, like the premise of a bad sitcom where the misunderstandings are cleared up in 20 minutes with a laugh track. But there is no laugh track here, and the silence in my house is loud enough to shatter my eardrums. It started on a Tuesday. I remember the day clearly because it was trash day, and I was dragging the recycling bin down the driveway, trying to avoid stepping on the wet patches of grass that always seemed to soak through my sneakers. I'm a creature of habit. I work from home as a data analyst, which means my world is small, controlled, and predictable. I like it that way. Or rather, I liked it that way. You have a lot of nerve showing your face out here, David. The voice cut through the morning air like a rusted saw. I turned to see Jerry, my next-door neighbor, standing on the edge of his property line. Jerry was a man who looked like he was constantly struggling to digest a lemon. He was in his mid-50s, always wore polo shirts that were slightly too tight around the midsection, and maintained a lawn that looked more like a putting green than a backyard. We had lived next to each other for 3 years. We had exchanged maybe 50 words in that time, mostly pertaining to the weather or the erratic schedule of the mail carrier. "Good morning to you too, Jerry," I said, pausing with the handle of the blue bin in my hand. "Is there a problem?" "Don't play dumb with me," Jerry snapped. He took a step closer, crossing the invisible line that separated our driveways. His face was flushed, a mottled red that clashed with his beige house. "I know you took it." I blinked, genuinely confused. "Took what?" "The package," he spat. "Delivery confirmation said it was dropped off at 2 p.m. yesterday. I got home at 5 o'clock. It was gone. You're the only one home all day, David. You sit in that office of yours with the window facing the street. You saw it, and you took it." I laughed. I couldn't help it. The accusation was so absurd, so completely detached from the reality of who I was, that my brain processed it as a joke. "Jerry, I make a comfortable living. I don't need to steal your, whatever it was. Blender? Socks? What did you order?" "It was custom parts for my restoration project," he said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "Expensive. Hard to find. And I want them back before I escalate this." "I didn't touch your package, Jerry. Check the bushes. Maybe the driver hit it." I checked the bushes. I checked the porch. I checked the entire perimeter, Jerry said, pointing a thick finger at my chest. "I know what you are. You're one of those quiet types. You think because you keep to yourself, no one notices you. But I notice. I see you watching." That shiver of unease, the one you get when you realize you're talking to someone who isn't operating on the same logic board as you, slid down my spine. "I'm going to go inside now," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "If you have an issue, take it up with the delivery company. Stay off my property." I turned my back on him, a primal instinct screaming at me not to expose my neck, and walked back up the driveway. "I'm watching you," he screamed after me. "I know what you're doing." I went inside, locked the door, and leaned against it. My wife, Amanda, was in the kitchen, brewing her second pot of coffee. She looked up, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun, a look of mild concern on her face. "Who was yelling?" she asked. "Jerry," I said, exhaling sharply. "He thinks I stole his package." Amanda paused, the coffee pot hovering over her mug. "Jerry? The guy who measures his grass with a ruler? Why would he think you stole anything?" "Because I'm home all day," I said, walking into the kitchen and grabbing an apple from the bowl. "Apparently, that makes me the prime suspect in the case of the missing car parts." "The guy is unhinged, Amanda. He looked manic." Amanda set the pot down and leaned against the counter. She had this way of looking at me, a soft, pitiful expression that usually made me feel loved, but today it just felt heavy. "Maybe he's just stressed, David. You know he's been going through that divorce. People act out when they're hurting." "There's acting out, and then there's accusing your neighbor of a felony," I countered. "He threatened to escalate it. I don't even know what that means." "Just ignore him," she said, coming over and smoothing the collar of my shirt. Her hands were cold. "He'll realize the carrier lost it, and he'll feel like an idiot. Don't engage. You know how you get when you fixate on things." I frowned. "How I get?" "You obsess," she said gently. "Remember the dispute with the cable company? You spent 3 weeks documenting internet speeds. Just let it go, David. For me." I kissed her forehead. "Fine. I'll let it go. But if he comes onto the property again, I'm buying a moat." I tried to follow her advice. I really did. I went back to my office, put on my noise-canceling headphones, and dove into a spreadsheet that was due by end of day. But the unease lingered. My desk faced the window, which looked out onto the street and a sliver of Jerry's driveway. Every time a car drove by, I flinched. I found myself staring at the patch of lawn where he had confronted me, replaying the conversation. "I see you watching." It was such a specific, paranoid thing to say. I wasn't watching him. If anything, I went out of my way to avoid looking at his house. 2 days passed without incident. I assumed Amanda was right. Jerry had found his package or cooled off. I relaxed. I even waved at him when I saw him getting into his truck on Thursday morning. He didn't wave back. He just stared, his eyes hidden behind aviator sunglasses, and slowly drove away. Then came Friday. I had ordered a new hard drive for my server. It wasn't cheap, and I needed it for a project starting the following week. I got the notification on my phone, delivered at 11:45 a.m. Left at front door. I was on a conference call, so I couldn't go down immediately. At 12:15, I hung up, stretched, and walked downstairs to retrieve it. I opened the front door and looked down. The porch was empty. I stepped out, confused. I checked behind the planter. I checked under the bench. Nothing. I walked down the steps and looked in the bushes, exactly as I had told Jerry to do. Nothing. I pulled out my phone and checked the delivery photo. It was there, clear as day, the brown box leaning against my door, with my distinct welcome mat visible underneath it. It had been delivered. And in the 30 minutes between the drop-off and me opening the door, it had vanished. My stomach dropped. I looked over at Jerry's house. His truck was in the driveway. I marched across the lawn before I could talk myself out of it. My blood was boiling. It was one thing to be accused falsely. It was another to be the victim of a revenge theft. I pounded on his front door. It took a minute, but the door opened. Jerry stood there, holding a half-eaten sandwich. He looked at me with a smirk that made me want to scream. "Well, well," he said. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Where is it, Jerry?" I demanded. "Where is what?" "My hard drive. It was delivered 30 minutes ago. Now it's gone. You're the only one who would take it." Jerry laughed, a dry, hacking sound. "Oh, that's rich. That is really rich. You think I stooped to your level? I'm not a thief, David. I'm a victim. Maybe now you know how it feels." "I didn't take your package," I shouted, losing my composure. "But you definitely took mine. Give it back, or I'm calling the police." Jerry's expression hardened instantly. He stepped out onto his porch, closing the door behind him. "You call the cops. Go ahead. Tell them you think your neighbor stole your computer part because you're paranoid. I'll tell them about the 3 packages of mine that have gone missing in the last month. Yeah, 3. I only told you about the 1. But I've been watching the pattern. I faltered. 3. You're sloppy, Jerry said, his voice lowering to a whisper. You think you're smart, but you're sloppy. I don't have your drive. Maybe the universe is just balancing the scales. Get off my porch. He went inside and slammed the door. I stood there, shaking. I walked back to my house, feeling exposed. The suburbs, usually a symbol of safety and boredom, suddenly felt like a battlefield. I went inside and found Amanda in the living room, reading a magazine. He took it, I said, pacing the room. He actually took it. Amanda looked up, startled. Who took what? Jerry. My hard drive. It was delivered, and 30 minutes later it was gone. He did it out of spite. Amanda set the magazine down. David, did you see him take it? I didn't have to. He practically admitted it. He gave me this speech about balancing the scales. He's delusional, Amanda. He said he's lost 3 packages. He thinks I'm stealing from him consistently. Amanda stood up and walked over to me, placing her hands on my shoulders. Okay, calm down. Breathe. If he took it, that's terrible. But we can't prove it. Amazon will refund you. You know they always do. It's not about the refund. I pulled away from her, frustrated that she wasn't as angry as I was. It's about having a lunatic next door who is stealing my property to teach me a lesson for a crime I didn't commit. I don't feel safe, Amanda. What if he escalates? What if he keys the cars? He's not going to key the cars, she said, her voice soothing, almost patronizing. He's just an angry, lonely old man. Look, why don't we just get a camera? A doorbell camera. That way, if it happens again, we have proof. And it might deter him. I looked at her. It was the first sensible thing anyone had said all week. A camera. Yes. But not just a doorbell. I want coverage. I want to see the driveway, the porch, and the side yard facing his house. Amanda hesitated. Is that necessary? It seems a bit excessive. We don't want to provoke him by pointing lenses at his windows. I don't care about his windows. I care about my property. I'm going to the store. Now. I spent the rest of the weekend installing the system. I didn't go for the cheap, battery-operated ones. I wired 4 4K cameras into the eaves of the house. One covering the front door, one covering the driveway, one specifically angled at the strip of grass between our houses, and one in the backyard for good measure. I set up a server in my office to store the footage locally, not trusting the cloud to capture everything in high fidelity. Amanda watched me work with a mix of resignation and annoyance. You're turning our home into a fortress, David, she remarked as I drilled a hole through the siding for the Ethernet cable. I'm protecting us, I grunted. When I catch him, I'm going to print a photo of his face holding my package and staple it to every telephone pole in the neighborhood. By Sunday night, the system was live. I had a monitor on my desk dedicated to the feeds. I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. Let him try it again. I was ready. The first week was uneventful. I watched the mail carrier drop off letters. I watched the UPS guy deliver a box of clothes Amanda had ordered. I made sure to retrieve it within seconds. I watched Jerry come and go. I started to study Jerry. It's strange how much you learn about a person when you watch them on a silent screen. Jerry was a pacer. He would come home from work, he worked at a logistics firm, ironically, and pace his driveway while talking on the phone. He looked agitated constantly. He smoked, but only on the side of the house where he thought no one could see, hiding the cigarette in his cupped hand like a teenager. I also noticed he had visitors. Not friends. Short visits. A car would pull up, usually a sedan or an older SUV. A person would get out, walk to his door, stay for maybe 5 minutes, and leave. It happened twice that week. Drug dealer. I joked to Amanda over dinner on Wednesday. Don't be ridiculous, she said, pushing her peas around her plate. She looked tired. Dark circles were forming under her eyes. I'm just saying, short visits, agitated behavior. Maybe he's running a chop shop for stolen Amazon boxes. Amanda didn't laugh. Can we please stop talking about Jerry? It's exhausting, David. You're constantly checking that monitor. It's like you're hoping he does something. I just want the truth, I said defensively. Is everything okay? You seem off. I'm fine, she snapped, then softened. I'm just stressed at work. The quarterly review is coming up. And your obsession with the neighbor is adding to it. I just want a peaceful evening. Okay, I said. Sorry. No more Jerry talk. But I didn't stop watching. The breakthrough, or what I thought was the breakthrough, happened on the second Tuesday of surveillance. I was working late. The sun had gone down, and the cameras had switched to night vision, bathing the world in a ghostly grayscale. Movement on camera 3, the side yard, caught my eye. I maximized the window. It was Jerry. He was walking along the property line, but he wasn't on his side. He was walking on my grass. He was moving slowly, purposefully. He wasn't looking at my windows. He was looking at the ground. He stopped near the large oak tree that sat in the middle of our side yard. He knelt down. My heart hammered against my ribs. What are you doing? He seemed to be checking something near the base of the tree. He fiddled with a loose stone in the landscaping border. He lifted it, placed something underneath, and put the stone back. Then he stood up, looked around quickly, and hurried back to his house. I sat there, stunned. A dead drop? Was Jerry a spy? A dealer? I waited 10 minutes to make sure he wasn't coming back. Then I grabbed a flashlight and went outside. I told Amanda I was taking the trash out. I crept over to the oak tree. The air was cool and smelled of damp earth. I found the stone Jerry had moved. It was a piece of decorative slate I had put there years ago. I lifted it. Underneath was a small white envelope. I picked it up. It was heavy. My thumb brushed across the front. No name. No address. Just a blank white envelope. I hesitated. This was it. This was the proof that something nefarious was going on. I should open it. I had to open it. But then I heard the back door open. David. It was Amanda. I panicked. I didn't want her to know I was snooping again. She'd be furious. I shoved the envelope into my pocket and dropped the stone back in place. Over here. I called out, jogging back toward the driveway. Just checking the recycling bin lid. It was loose. Amanda stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the kitchen light. You've been out here for 5 minutes. Come inside. It's cold. I went inside, the envelope burning a hole in my pocket. I went straight to the bathroom and locked the door. My hands were shaking. I pulled out the envelope. It was sealed tight. I tore the corner. Inside was cash. A stack of $100 bills. I counted it. $2,000. And a note. A small scrap of yellow legal pad paper with handwriting I didn't recognize. Interest payment. Next installment due on the 15th. Don't be late. I stared at the note. Interest payment? To Jerry? Or from Jerry? He had placed it there. So he was paying someone. But who picked it up? I realized with a jolt that I had potentially intercepted a drop for a loan shark. If someone came to look for this money and it wasn't there, Jerry would be in trouble. Or I would be in trouble if they saw me take it. I flushed the toilet to mask the sound of my panic. I had to put it back. I waited until Amanda was in bed. I told her I had to finish some coding work. At 1 a.m., I crept back out. I put the envelope back under the stone exactly as I had found it. I ran back to my office and glued my eyes to the monitor. I had to see who picked it up. I sat there for 3 hours. My eyes burned. The silence of the house was oppressive. At 4:12 a.m., a car pulled up to the curb. It killed its headlights. A figure got out. Hooded sweatshirt, dark pants. They walked briskly up the driveway, my driveway, and cut across the grass to the oak tree. They knew exactly where to go. They knelt, lifted the stone, grabbed the envelope, and were back in the car in under 30 seconds. The car drove off. I sat back in my chair, exhaling a breath I felt like I'd been holding for a week. Someone was using my yard as a drop point for illegal money transfers involving my neighbor. This was huge. This was why Jerry was paranoid about me watching. He wasn't accusing me of stealing packages because he cared about the packages. He was trying to intimidate me into not looking too closely at the property line. I needed to tell Amanda. But not yet. If I told her now, she'd make me call the police. And if I called the police without concrete proof of what the money was for, we might get targeted by whoever was collecting that cash. I needed more data. The next day, I was a zombie. I drank 4 coffees before noon. Amanda noticed. "You look terrible," she said. "Did you sleep at all?" "Insomnia," I lied. "Work stress." "You need to disconnect, David. Maybe we should go away for the weekend. My sister in Vermont has been asking us to visit." "I can't," I said too quickly. "Not right now. Too many deadlines." I couldn't leave the house. Not while my yard was a criminal thoroughfare. I spent the day reviewing the footage from the past 2 weeks, focusing on the oak tree. I realized I had missed it before because the angle was bad on the old recordings, but now that I knew what to look for, I saw the pattern. Every Tuesday night, Jerry drops an envelope. Every Wednesday morning, around 4 a.m., the hooded figure picks it up. But then I saw something that made my blood run cold. I was scrubbing through the footage from 3 days prior, the Saturday before I found the cash. It was daytime. 2 p.m. I was out grocery shopping. Amanda was home alone. On the screen, I saw Amanda walk out of the back door. She was wearing her gardening gloves. She walked over to the oak tree. She knelt down. She lifted the stone. She put something under it. I froze the video. I zoomed in. It was pixelated, but it looked like a small box. Jewelry sized. I hit play. She stood up, looked around, specifically looking at Jerry's house, and then went back inside. 20 minutes later, Jerry came out of his back door. He walked to the property line, waited for a car to pass, then ducked over to the tree. He took the box. He opened it right there in the yard. He took out a necklace. I recognized it even on the grainy feed. It was Amanda's grandmother's emerald pendant. An heirloom. She told me it was in the safe deposit box at the bank. Jerry nodded, put the necklace in his pocket, and put an envelope, cash, under the stone. Amanda came back out 5 minutes later, retrieved the envelope, and went inside. The world stopped spinning. The floor fell out from under me. This wasn't about Jerry paying a loan shark. This was Jerry paying Amanda. And Amanda was selling him. What? Her jewelry? Why? And why through a dead drop in the yard? Why not just walk over and hand it to him? Because they were hiding it from me. The accusation. The stolen packages. The animosity. It was all a play. Jerry accused me of stealing to create a narrative of hostility. If I hated Jerry and Jerry hated me, I would never go over there. I would never talk to him. It created a perfect wall of silence between us, so I would never find out what they were doing. But why? Why was my wife selling her heirlooms to the neighbor in exchange for cash? I felt sick. A physical wave of nausea rolled over me. I ran to the bathroom and dry heaved. When I came out, I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like a ghost. I didn't know the person staring back at me. And apparently, I didn't know the woman sleeping in the next room. I had to know the extent of it. I went back to the computer. I started checking our bank accounts. I usually handled the mortgage and the utilities, but Amanda handled the savings and the discretionary funds. We had a joint savings account that we rarely touched, our future house fund. I logged in. The balance was $42.15. It should have been $85,000. I stared at the screen, clicking refresh, praying it was a glitch. It wasn't. Withdrawal after withdrawal. ATM limits hit daily. Transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. Venmo payments to consulting services. And then, looking further back, I saw the deposits. Massive cash deposits. $2,000 here. $5,000 there. Then immediately withdrawn. She was churning money. I checked my credit report. 3 credit cards opened in my name in the last 6 months. All maxed out. I was ruined. We were ruined. I sat in my chair, the glow of the monitor illuminating the ruin of my life. It wasn't just theft. It was an annihilation of our existence. I looked at the camera feed. The live view of the oak tree. The innocent little patch of grass where my financial future had been bartered away. I needed to confront her. But I couldn't just scream. She would lie. She would gaslight me. She was good at it. She had convinced me that I was the crazy one for suspecting the neighbor. She had used my own anxiety against me. I needed indisputable proof of the why. I bought a directional microphone online. Express shipping. It arrived Friday. I set it up in the window, pointed directly at the spot in the backyard where I had seen them talking once before, near the fence line, where the hedges were thick. I waited. Saturday morning. I told Amanda I was going to the office to catch up on work. I went into the room, locked the door, and put on the headphones. I watched the monitors. At 10 a.m., Amanda went outside to water the plants. She drifted toward the fence. Jerry came out a moment later. He was holding a clipboard, pretending to inspect his gutters. They met at the fence. I cranked the gain on the microphone. The static hissed, birds chirped like banshees, and then voices. "Can't keep doing this, Amanda," Jerry said. His voice was tinny but clear. "The guy is getting impatient. He wants the full principle, not just the vig." "I need more time," Amanda pleaded. Her voice was unrecognizable, high, desperate, terrified. "David is starting to ask questions about the budget. I can't move money as easily." "That's not my problem," Jerry said. "I stuck my neck out for you. I introduced you to him because you said you were good for it. Now you're dragging me into the mud. If he comes for you, he comes through me." "I have the watch," she said. "David's Rolex. The vintage one. He never wears it. I can get $3,000 for it." My hand flew to my wrist, instinctively checking for a watch I wasn't wearing. My grandfather's Rolex. It was in the safe. Or so I thought. $3,000 is a drop in the bucket, Jerry scoffed. "You owe 80, Amanda. $80,000. You lost it all. The online casinos, the crypto scams. You have a problem." "I can win it back," she hissed. "I just need one big hit. I have a system now." "You always have a system. Look, give me the watch. I'll pass it along. But you need to tell your husband. You need to sell the house." "I can't tell him. He'll leave me." "He's going to find out when the foreclosure notice hits, you idiot. You haven't paid the mortgage in 3 months." I ripped the headphones off. I hadn't paid the mortgage, but I transferred the money to the joint account every month. She wrote the check. She had been stealing the mortgage payments. We were going to lose the house. I sat there, trembling. The betrayal was total. It wasn't just money. It was the lies. The manipulation. Using Jerry, a man I thought was a psychopath, as a fence and a buffer for her gambling addiction. Jerry wasn't stealing my packages. He was probably intercepting the foreclosure notices and the collection letters that came to the house so I wouldn't see them. The stolen packages accusation was a theater piece designed to keep me from talking to Jerry, so Jerry wouldn't accidentally slip up and ask me, "Hey, when are you paying Vinny the Shark?" I had to act. But I was terrified. If I confronted her, she might run. Or worse, if these loan sharks were real, they might come for us. I needed to secure the assets we had left, if any. I spent the next 2 hours on the phone. I called the bank and froze everything. I called the credit bureaus and put a lock on my identity. I called the mortgage company. "Yes, Mr. Henderson," the representative said, her voice dripping with professional pity. "We are in default. Notice of sale has been scheduled for next month. We haven't received a payment since February." It was May. "Is there any way to stop it?" I asked, my voice breaking. "You would need to pay the arrears in full. $22,000. I didn't have $22,000. I had $42. I hung up. I looked out the window at Amanda. She was still gardening, deadheading the roses as if she hadn't just plotted to pawn my grandfather's watch to pay off a gambling debt. I formulated a plan. It was petty, perhaps, but I needed to catch her in the act. I needed her to hand over that watch while I was recording, so she couldn't deny it later. She couldn't say I lost it or it was stolen. I went to the safe in the master closet. I knew the combination. I opened it. Empty. The watch was already gone. The emergency cash was gone. Her passport was gone. My passport was there. I felt a cold realization. She wasn't just paying debts. She was preparing a shoot. I went back to my office. I took the empty box of a previous Amazon delivery. I filled it with rocks. I taped it up. I printed a new label addressed to myself. I walked out the front door, placed the box on the porch, and went back inside. I waited. It didn't take long. Amanda came in from the garden. She saw the box. I watched on the monitor. She picked it up. She shook it. It rattled. Heavy. Valuable? She didn't bring it inside. She tucked it under her arm and walked quickly around the side of the house toward the oak tree. She was going to give Jerry a box of rocks, thinking it was something of mine she could sell. I walked out the back door and intercepted her just as she reached the tree. Amanda. She jumped, nearly dropping the box. She spun around, her eyes wide. David. You scared me. I was just taking out the recycling. That's an Amazon box, I said, pointing to it. Addressed to me. Oh, this. She laughed nervously. I saw it on the porch. I was bringing it around to the garage. To break it down. Why didn't you bring it inside? I didn't want to clutter the hall. Open it, I said. What? Open the box, Amanda. Her face crumbled. The mask of the doting wife slipped, revealing a stranger. David, stop it. You're acting crazy again. Like with Jerry. Jerry isn't the problem, is he? Jerry is the middleman. Jerry is the one keeping your bookie off your back. She went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. I know about the mortgage, I said, stepping closer. I know about the savings. I know about the credit cards. And I know you stole my grandfather's watch. She dropped the box. It hit the ground with a heavy thud. David, please, she whispered. Tears instantly welled up in her eyes. I can fix it. I just need a little more time. I was on a streak. I almost had enough to pay the arrears. You gambled our house, Amanda, I said, my voice shaking with a rage so cold it felt like ice in my veins. You gambled my retirement. You stole my identity. I did it for us, she screamed, suddenly angry. I wanted us to have more. You're always so frugal, so boring. I wanted a life. And then I got in a hole, and I tried to dig out. By selling my heirlooms to the neighbor? Jerry helped me, she sobbed. He knows people. He tried to help. Jerry is an accomplice to fraud, I said. And so are you. At that moment, Jerry walked out of his back door. He must have heard the shouting. He looked at us, looked at the box on the ground, and sighed. He looked older than he ever had. She told you, Jerry said. It wasn't a question. I found out, I corrected. No thanks to you. Jerry pulled a pack of cigarettes out of his pocket and lit one. I told her to tell you months ago. I told her it was going to blow up. You accused me of stealing packages. I shouted at him. You made me feel like I was losing my mind. I needed you to stay away from me, Jerry said, exhaling smoke. If you came over, you might have seen the collection notices I was intercepting for her. Or the guys who came to collect. They aren't nice guys, David. I was trying to keep them off your porch. You were protecting her, I said. I was protecting the neighborhood, Jerry shrugged. I didn't want kneecaps getting broken on my lawn. She owes bad people a lot of money. I looked at Amanda. She was weeping into her hands. Where is the watch? I asked Jerry. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the Rolex. He tossed it to me. I caught it. I didn't sell it yet, Jerry said. I couldn't do it. It's a nice piece. I was going to hold it until she came up with the cash, or until you found out. I figured this day was coming. I gripped the watch. Get out of here, Amanda. She looked up. What? Leave. Go to your sister's. Go anywhere. But you can't stay here. But this is my house. Not anymore, I said. According to the bank, it's barely ours. And once I file the police report for the identity theft and the fraud, you're not going to want to be here." "You wouldn't," she gasped. "David, please. No police. We can work this out. It's a family matter." "You stopped being family when you stole my future," I said. I turned and walked back into the house. I locked the back door. I locked the front door. I went to the server room and backed up every second of footage. The dead drops. The conversations. The confessions. Amanda banged on the door for an hour. She screamed. She cried. Eventually, she got in her car and drove away. I sat in the silence of the empty house. The next few months were a blur of lawyers and forensic accountants. I didn't file a police report immediately. I used the threat of it to get Amanda to agree to a divorce settlement that gave me everything, which was essentially nothing, since she had destroyed our net worth. I managed to save the house. I cashed out my 401k, taking a massive penalty, to pay the mortgage arrears. It hurt, but I kept the roof over my head. I saw Jerry a few weeks later. He was mowing his lawn. I walked over to the property line. He stopped the mower. He looked at me wary. "She gone?" he asked. "She's gone," I said. "Divorce is finalized next week." Jerry nodded. "Sorry, David. I mean it. I shouldn't have got involved. She can be very convincing." "She's an addict," I said. "And a liar." "Yeah." Jerry wiped his forehead. "Look, about the package thing. The hard drive." "Yeah. I really did take it," he admitted, looking down. "I was just so pissed off that day because her bookie was breathing down my neck, and I saw your box, and I just snapped. I wanted to make you hurt a little." "Where is it?" "I threw it in the river," he said. I stared at him. Then, surprisingly, I laughed. A dry, humorless sound. "You owe me $200, Jerry." "I'll pay you," he said. "Installment plan?" "Just stay off my lawn," I said. I walked back to my house. The cameras were still running. They always would be now. The trust was gone, not just in Amanda, but in the idea of the quiet, safe suburban life. I realized that you never really know what's happening behind the closed blinds of your neighbors, or even behind the eyes of the person sleeping next to you. I still check the feeds. Every day. I watch the mailman. I watch the cars go by. And sometimes I watch the oak tree, half expecting to see a ghost kneeling there, trading my life away for one more spin of the wheel. But it's just a tree. And I'm just a man in an empty house, watching the world through a 4K lens, waiting for the next package to arrive. The silence in the house after Amanda left wasn't peaceful, it was heavy. It had mass. It pressed against the windows and settled into the carpet. I had to deal with the fallout. The family drama phase was over, and the bureaucratic nightmare phase had begun. I sat down with a lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Rebecca who looked at my spreadsheets and camera logs with a mixture of horror and professional admiration. "This is extensive," she said, tapping a printout of the withdrawal history. She was structured. This wasn't just impulse. She was moving money to hide the losses. "She had help," I said. "The neighbor." "We can depose him if we need to," Rebecca said. "But honestly, David, the goal here is to sever ties. If you go after her criminally, it ties you to her for years. Trials, restitution hearings, restitution she can't pay. Do you want justice, or do you want freedom?" I thought about it. I thought about the endless nights watching the monitor. I thought about the toxicity that had seeped into my blood. "Freedom," I said. "Then we file for divorce based on irreconcilable differences, citing financial infidelity. We ask for the house, full ownership. We ask for her to assume all debt solely in her name, though the credit card companies might still come after you since it's a joint liability state. We'll have to fight that separately." The process was grueling. Amanda tried to reach out. She sent emails. Long rambling screeds about how she was going to Gamblers Anonymous, how she was staying with a friend, how she missed our dog, we didn't have a dog, which showed how far gone her mental state was, or maybe she was copy-pasting apologies she found online. I never replied. I blocked her number. I set up a filter for her emails to go straight to a folder I named The Abyss. But the hardest part wasn't the legal battle. It was the neighborhood. News travels fast in suburbia. The screaming match on the lawn. The sudden departure of the wife. The police cruiser that stopped by once just to take a report on the identity theft. I had to file it to clear the credit cards, even if I didn't press charges for an arrest. People looked at me differently. I was the guy whose wife blew up their life. Or, in some twisted versions of the rumor mill, I was the abusive husband who kicked her out. I went to the grocery store. I ran into Mrs. Gable from 3 doors down. She was a sweet old lady who usually baked cookies for Christmas. "David," she said, clutching her purse. "I haven't seen Amanda lately." "She moved out, Mrs. Gable," I said, reaching for a carton of milk. "Oh dear. Trouble in paradise." "Something like that." "Well," she leaned in, whispering conspiratorially. "I saw her, you know, with that man." My heart skipped. "What man?" "The one in the dark car. Used to park down the street." I thought maybe that was why she left. I froze. The man in the dark car. The one who picked up the envelopes. When did you see her with him? "Oh, a few times. Daytime. While you were working. She'd get in the car, they'd drive off, come back an hour later." It wasn't just drops. She was meeting him. Was it an affair? Or was she meeting the loan shark to plead her case? I went home and checked the archives again. I had missed it. The camera angle on the driveway didn't catch the street 3 houses down. I felt a fresh wave of nausea. How much had I missed? I thought I was the all-seeing eye, but I was looking through a straw. I decided I needed to talk to Jerry again. He was the only one who knew the whole truth. I waited until Friday evening. I saw him sitting on his porch, drinking a beer. He looked haggard. The divorce he had mentioned to me, his own divorce, seemed to be taking a toll, or maybe it was the stress of being a bagman for the neighborhood gambling ring. I grabbed 2 beers from my fridge. I walked over. I didn't step on his grass. I stood on the driveway. "Thirsty?" I asked, holding up the bottle. Jerry looked at me, suspicious. Then he shrugged. "Always." I tossed him the beer. He caught it. I sat on my own porch steps, facing him. The distance between us was about 20 feet. "Mrs. Gable said she saw Amanda getting into a car with the collection guy," I said. Jerry winced. He took a long pull of the beer. "Yeah, she did." "Was she sleeping with him?" "No," Jerry shook his head. "Not like that. He was taking her to pawn shops, escorting her, making sure she didn't run with the cash she got." Jesus. She was in deep, David. Deeper than you know. That guy, Vinny? He's not a bank. He charges 10% a week. She was paying him just to keep breathing. "Why did you help her?" I asked. "Really? Why?" Jerry sighed. He looked at the beer bottle label, peeling the corner. "Because she reminded me of my daughter." I blinked. "Your daughter?" "She had a problem too. Opiates. Died 4 years ago. I spent 10 years covering for her, hiding her mistakes, paying off her dealers. When Amanda came to me, crying, terrified, I just fell into the old habit. I thought if I could help her manage it, she could get out. I was wrong. You can't save people who don't want to be saved." We sat in silence for a long time. The crickets started to chirp. The street lights flickered on. "I'm keeping the cameras," I said. "Good idea," Jerry said. "It's a crazy world. You ever accuse me of stealing again, Jerry, and I will print those photos of you taking the necklace." Jerry chuckled. "Fair enough." The interaction was strange, almost surreal. We were 2 broken men sitting on adjacent porches, bound by the wreckage of the woman who had played us both. A month later, the foreclosure notice was rescinded. I had paid the ransom. The house was mine. But it felt too big. Too empty. I walked through the rooms. The guest room, where Amanda had set up her painting studio, she never painted. The dining room, where we had hosted Thanksgiving dinners, paid for, I now realized, with credit cards she hid from me. I found things. Little artifacts of her deception. In the back of the linen closet, taped under a shelf, I found a burner phone. It was dead. I charged it. I turned it on. Texts. Hundreds of them. "Vinny, where is it? Amanda, I'm getting it. David's suspects. Vinny, I don't care about David. I care about my money. Amanda, I can get his social security number. You can open a line of credit. I stared at the screen. She had offered me up on a platter. It wasn't just desperation, it was predation. I took the phone to the police. This time, I didn't hesitate. Identity theft is one thing, conspiracy to commit fraud is another. I handed it over to a detective who looked as tired as I felt. We'll add it to the file, he said. Will you find her? We know where she is, the detective said. She's in Nevada. Reno. Of course. She went to the source. Is she in trouble? She's working as a waitress. Living in a motel. Unless you press charges for the fraud, she's free to ruin her own life. Let her go, I said. Just keep the report on file in case she tries to use my name again. I went home. I decided to renovate. I needed to scrub the house of her. I ripped up the carpets. I painted the walls. I turned her painting studio into a gym. One afternoon, while tearing out the baseboards in the master bedroom, I found a hole in the drywall behind the nightstand. It had been patched poorly. I poked it with a screwdriver. The plaster crumbled. Inside the wall cavity, there was a bag. A black velvet drawstring bag. I pulled it out. It was heavy. I opened it. Gold coins. Krugerrands. 10 of them. At current prices, that was roughly $20,000. I sat on the floor, covered in drywall dust, holding the heavy gold coins. She had hidden them. Skimmed from the loans, maybe? A go bag she forgot to take? Or maybe she couldn't get to them because I was always in the room. I laughed. I laughed until I cried. It was almost exactly the amount I had paid to stop the foreclosure. The universe, in its own twisted way, had balanced the scales. I didn't tell Jerry about the coins. I didn't tell the lawyer. I put them in a safety deposit box at a bank across town, a bank Amanda had never used. That was my insurance. Life settled into a new rhythm. I worked. I worked out. I watched the cameras. Jerry moved out 6 months later. He sold the house to a young couple with a baby. They were nice. They waved. They didn't accuse me of stealing. I introduced myself. Hi, I'm David. Nice to meet you. We're the Millers. Hey, just so you know, we get a lot of diaper deliveries. If they end up on your porch, sorry in advance. No problem, I smiled. I'll keep an eye out. I didn't tell them about the cameras. I didn't tell them about the history of the driveway. But I watched. I watched the delivery trucks. I watched the visitors. One day, a year after the whole ordeal, a car pulled up to the Miller's house. A dark sedan. My stomach tightened. A man got out. He walked to the door. He didn't knock. He left a flyer on the mat and walked away. I zoomed in with the camera. Lawn care services. I exhaled. Paranoia is a hard habit to break. I decided it was time to dial it back. I took down the camera facing the side yard, the one pointing at the oak tree. I didn't need to see that spot anymore. The grass had grown over the loose stone. The secret was buried. I kept the front door camera and the driveway camera. Standard security. I started dating again. Slowly. Cautiously. I met a woman named Sarah. She was a librarian. She was quiet, funny, and frugal. On our third date, she came over for dinner. As we walked up the driveway, she noticed the camera. Serious security, she remarked. Yeah, I said. Had some issues with porch pirates a while back. That's annoying. My neighbor is like that. Constantly complaining about packages. I stopped. I looked at her. Your neighbor complains about packages? Yes, she laughed. He's this grumpy old guy. Thinks everyone is out to get him. I smiled. A genuine smile. Well, I said, unlocking the door. As long as you don't start hiding envelopes under rocks, we'll get along fine. What? Nothing, I said. Inside joke. We went inside. I closed the door. I locked it. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't immediately check the monitor. The story could have ended there. It should have ended there. But life rarely gives you a clean cut. 3 months into dating Sarah, I got a letter. No return address. Postmarked from Reno, Nevada. I knew who it was. I held it over the trash can. I should drop it. I should burn it. But curiosity is a disease. I opened it. There was no letter. Just a photo. It was a picture of a baby. A newborn. And written on the back, in Amanda's handwriting. His name is Leo. He has your eyes. I stared at the photo. The baby did have my eyes. The shape, the color. But the timeline. She left a year ago. A baby takes 9 months. If she was pregnant when she left, she would have known. Or she got pregnant immediately after. Or, I did the math. The agonizing math. If the baby was a newborn in the photo, and the photo was taken recently. She left in May. It was now August of the following year. 15 months. If the baby was 1 month old, born in July. Conception in October. I wasn't with her in October. She was in Reno. I felt a rush of relief so potent it made me dizzy. It wasn't mine. But then I looked closer at the photo. The blanket the baby was wrapped in. It was a blanket my mother had knitted. A distinct pattern of yellow and blue ducks. We had kept it in the attic, in a box marked future. She had taken it. She had stolen my childhood blanket, the one meant for my child, and used it for, whose? Vinny's? Some random guy in Reno? Or, I looked at the baby's face again. It didn't just look like me. It looked like. I went to my computer. I pulled up the archived footage of Jerry. I zoomed in on his face. The set of his jaw. The nose. I looked at the baby. The nose was Jerry's nose. I sat there, the photo trembling in my hand. The visits. The helping her out. She reminds me of my daughter. Was it just a loan shark relationship? Or was it more? Had my wife and my neighbor. I stood up. I paced the room. No. That was crazy. That was soap opera crazy. Jerry was in his 50s. Amanda was 30. But desperation makes strange bedfellows. And if she needed money, and he was lonely, and he did say he gave her money. He said he was covering for her. I looked at the photo again. He has your eyes. Was she taunting me? Lying to me? Trying to drag me back in with a paternity trap? If the kid was mine, the math didn't work. Unless the kid was older than he looked. Or unless the photo was old. I flipped the photo over. No date stamp. I put the photo back in the envelope. I could find out. I could hire a PI. I could demand a DNA test. I looked at the monitor. The screen showed the driveway. Sarah's car was pulled up. She was coming over for movie night. I looked at the envelope. I looked at the screen. I walked to the shredder. I fed the envelope into the teeth. The machine roared, chewing up the paper, the photo, the baby, the lies, the questions. ZZZZZZT. Gone. I wasn't going to play. I wasn't going to let her hook me again. If the boy was mine, she would come for child support eventually. If he wasn't, she was fishing for a handout. If he was Jerry's, well, Jerry was gone. I emptied the shredder bin into the trash. I went to the door and opened it just as Sarah was walking up the steps. Hey, she smiled. I brought popcorn. Perfect, I said. I'm ready for a distraction. Everything okay? She asked, sensing my mood. Yeah, I said, looking past her at the empty street where Jerry's truck used to be. Just clearing out some old junk. Good, she said. Make room for the new stuff. We went inside. I didn't check the cameras that night. But the next morning, I did one final thing. I went to the oak tree. I dug up the loose stone. I took it out of the ground completely. I filled the hole with concrete. I smoothed it over. No more hiding spots. No more secrets. The neighbor war was over. I had won the battle for the house, but the war for my peace of mind was a longer campaign. And as the concrete dried, sealing the earth shut, I finally felt the last tether snap. I was free. Or so I told myself. But sometimes, late at night, when the house settles and the wind blows through the eaves, I think about the baby with the yellow and blue blanket. And I wonder. But I never ever check the mail without a witness. Epilogue. 3 years later. It's funny how trauma reshapes your habits. I still don't like answering the door. I still prefer to pick up packages at the Amazon locker at the grocery store rather than have them delivered to the house. Sarah and I are married now. We have a dog. A golden retriever named Buster who barks at leaves. We were cleaning out the garage last weekend, organizing boxes. Sarah found an old plastic bin labeled Tax Docs 2018 to 2020. "Can we shred these?" she asked. "Yeah, probably," I said. She dumped the bin out. Papers slid across the concrete floor. Something clattered. A key. A small, silver key. I picked it up. It had a tag on it. Unit 404. I didn't recognize it. "What's that?" Sarah asked. "I don't know. Must be old." I turned it over. On the back of the tag, in faded ink, was an address. "You store it, Maine St." My heart did that familiar, painful lurch. Amanda. This must have been in the tax box from before she left. I had missed it. Unit 404. Was this where the rest of the stuff went? The things she didn't sell to Jerry? I pocketed the key. "Just trash," I said to Sarah. Later that day, I drove to the storage facility. It was a rundown place on the edge of town. I went to the front desk. "I found this key," I told the guy. "I think my ex-wife, rented a unit here years ago. Is it still active?" He punched a few keys on his keyboard. "Unit 404? Yeah. It's active. Paid up through next month." Paid up. I was stunned. By who? Auto pay. Credit card. "Can you tell me whose name is on the account?" "David Henderson," he said. My blood ran cold. She had opened a storage unit in my name, with a card I didn't know about, and it had been auto-paying for 3 years. "I'm David Henderson," I said, showing my ID. "I'd like to see my unit." He shrugged. "Go ahead. You got the key." I walked down the orange hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Unit 404. I stood in front of the metal door. My hand shook as I inserted the key. It turned. I slid the latch and rolled the door up. The smell of stale air and dust hit me. The unit was full. Floor to ceiling. Boxes. Furniture. And in the middle, a car. A vintage Mustang. Cherry red. I stared at it. It was Jerry's car. The one he had been restoring for years. The one he said he sold to pay for his divorce. Why was Jerry's car in a storage unit in my name? I walked in. On the hood of the car was an envelope. For David. I opened it. "If you're reading this, you found the key. Or the bank finally called you about the card. The car is yours. It's worth about 40 grand. That should cover the rest of what she stole from you." I couldn't let her sell it. She tried. I told her I sold it, but I put it here. I put it in your name so she couldn't touch it. Consider it interest. Jerry. I leaned against the cool metal of the car. Jerry hadn't just been covering for her. He had been hedging his bets. He knew she would crash and burn, and he had stashed a lifeboat for me. Why? Guilt? Or just a twisted sense of honor among thieves? I looked around the unit. There were other boxes. I opened one. It was full of my stuff. My college yearbooks. My bowling trophy. The things I thought she had thrown away or sold. She hadn't sold everything. She had kept the things that mattered to me. Why? Because she loved me? No. You don't destroy the person you love. Because she wanted to keep a piece of me? Or because Jerry made her save them? I sat on the bumper of the Mustang. I had spent 3 years hating Jerry. Thinking he was a villain. Then thinking he was a patsy. Turns out, he was just a neighbor. A flawed, complicated neighbor who saw a train wreck coming and tried to install some airbags. I drove the Mustang home. Sarah was in the driveway when I pulled up. "Nice car," she said, eyebrows raised. "Impulse buy." "Inheritance," I said. "Sort of." "From who?" "An old friend," I said. I parked it in the garage. That night, I logged into the camera system. I went to the settings. Delete all archives. Are you sure? Yes. I watched the progress bar. 0%. 50%. 100%. The screen went black. I turned off the monitor. I went upstairs to my wife. The past was in the shredder. The car was in the garage. The gold was in the bank. And the neighbors? Well, they were just people. And people are messy. But as long as they stayed on their side of the fence, we'd be just fine. The end. The ringtone was the default iPhone chime. It was sharp, abrasive, and completely out of place in the quiet hum of my office. I looked at the screen. The name flashing, there was one I had not seen in 4 years. Frank. My thumb hovered over the decline button. It would have been so easy to press it. It would have been the healthy choice. My therapist would have applauded me. My wife would have nodded in that supportive way she does, telling me I was protecting my peace. But curiosity is a heavy anchor. It drags you down even when you know you should be swimming for the surface. I answered it. I did not say hello. I just held the phone to my ear and waited. For a moment, there was just the sound of breathing. Then, a throat clearing. "Alex? You there?" His voice was older. It had lost that booming, confident baritone that used to shake the walls of my childhood bedroom. It sounded thin. Scratchy. Like a radio losing its signal. "I am here, Frank," I said. My voice was steady. That was the first victory. "What do you want?" "Is that how you talk to your father?" he asked. The reflex was still there. The demand for unearned respect. "My father is dead, Frank. You are my mother's husband. What do you want?" There was a pause. I could hear the hesitation. This was a man who never hesitated. This was a man who bulldozed through conversations like a tank through drywall. "We need to talk," he said. "Your mother and I. We need to see you. It is important." "I am busy." "It is about the house," he said quickly. "And, well, look. I am not going to beg. But we are in a tight spot. A temporary situation. I know you have done well for yourself. I just want to present you with an opportunity." An opportunity. That word triggered a slide projector in my brain, cycling through 20 years of memories. Every time Frank said, "opportunity," disaster followed. But 20 years ago, I was the victim of those disasters. Today, I was the one holding the checkbook. "Dinner," I said. "Friday. 7 p.m. The steakhouse on 4th. Do not be late." I hung up before he could argue about the venue. Frank hated expensive restaurants because they made him feel small. That was exactly why I chose it. To understand why this phone call made my blood run cold and hot at the same time, you have to understand who Frank was. You have to understand what he did to me. Not physically. He never hit me. He was too smart for that. He knew that bruises heal and leave evidence. Words do not fade. They bury themselves in your marrow and change the way your bones grow. My mother married Frank when I was 7. My biological father had passed away in a car accident when I was 2, so I had no memory of him. I only had the photos. Frank came into the picture like a savior. He was a manager at a mid-sized paper distribution firm. He drove a leased BMW. He wore suits that were slightly too shiny. To my mother, who was struggling to keep us afloat on a receptionist's salary, he looked like stability. The mask slipped about 6 months after the wedding. It started with the subtle digs. I was a quiet kid. I liked to read. I liked building complex structures with Legos. I did not like football. I did not like getting my hands dirty working on his car. "Boy is soft," he would say to my mother over dinner, gesturing to me with his fork. "You coddle him, Sarah. That is the problem. The real world is going to chew him up and spit him out." My mother would just smile nervously and push peas around her plate. "He is just distinct, Frank. He is smart." "Smart does not put food on the table," Frank would snap. "Grit puts food on the table. Hustle puts food on the table. Alex. He has got his head in the clouds. He will be lucky if he ends up managing a gas station." I was 8 years old. By the time I was 12, my half-brother Kyle was born. Kyle was the golden child from the moment he took his first breath. He was loud. He was aggressive. He looked exactly like Frank. The contrast became the narrative of our household. Kyle broke a window. It was high spirits. It showed he had energy. I dropped a plate while doing the dishes. I was clumsy, careless, and useless. The definitive moment, the one I replayed in my head every single day for 2 decades, happened when I was 16. I had entered a robotics competition. I had spent 6 months building a functional robotic arm using scrap parts scavenged from the local dump and motors I bought with money for mowing lawns. I was proud of it. I won first place in the district. I came home with the trophy. It was cheap plastic painted gold, but to me, it was the Super Bowl. I put it on the kitchen table, waiting for them to come home. Frank walked in first. He was in a bad mood. He had been passed over for a promotion again. He looked at the trophy. He looked at me. "What is this junk?" he asked. "I won," I said. "First place. Robotics." He picked up the trophy. He weighed it in his hand like a piece of fruit he suspected was rotten. "Robots," he scoffed. "You playing with toys while other kids are out playing sports or working real jobs. You think this matters? You think some nerd judge giving you a plastic cup means you are worth something?" "It means I am good at engineering," I said. It was the first time I had ever talked back. Frank laughed. It was a cold, barking sound. "Engineering? You need math for that. You need a brain for that. You are a tinkerer, Alex. You are the guy who fixes the toaster, not the guy who designs it. You are aiming too high. You always do. And the higher you aim, the harder you fall. I am just trying to protect you from yourself." He tossed the trophy back onto the table. It tipped over and cracked the base. "Get rid of it," he said. "We need the table for dinner. And get a haircut. You look like a vagrant. I swear, looking at you is like looking at a bad investment. All sunk costs and no return. You will never amount to anything, Alex. The sooner you accept that you are average, the happier you will be." I glued the trophy back together that night. I kept it in a shoebox under my bed. And I made a vow. I was not just going to succeed. I was going to succeed so hard that it would choke him. The day I turned 18, Frank presented me with an invoice. It was printed on his office computer. It listed room, board, electricity, and water usage for the past 10 years. The total was nearly $40,000. "This is the real world," Frank said, slamming the paper down on the counter. "You are an adult now. You want to live under my roof? You pay. Since you have no job and no savings because you wasted your time with books and toys, you can't pay. So you are out." My mother stood in the corner, weeping silently. She did not stop him. She never stopped him. She valued her security over her son. That was a hard lesson, but a necessary one. I packed my bags. I had $300 and a beat-up Honda Civic I had bought from a neighbor. "Good luck," Frank said as I walked out the door. He was smiling. He was enjoying this. He thought he was teaching me a lesson that would break me. Don't come crawling back when you fail. We are not a charity. I slept in my car for the first 3 weeks. I showered at a 24-hour gym. I ate peanut butter sandwiches and apples. I got a job at a warehouse moving boxes. It was brutal work. My back ached constantly. My hands were covered in blisters. Every time I lifted a box, I heard Frank's voice. "You will be lucky if you end up managing a gas station." I worked the warehouse shift from 4 a.m. to 1 p.m. Then I went to community college classes from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Then I studied until midnight. I did not have a social life. I did not have a girlfriend. I did not have fun. I had rage. Rage is a potent fuel. It burns dirty, but it burns hot. I transferred to a state university after 2 years. I got a full academic scholarship because my grades were perfect. I did not allow myself to get a B. A B was failure. A B was Frank winning. I majored in supply chain management and logistics with a minor in computer science. It was not the most glamorous field. It was not being a rock star or a famous actor. But I looked at the data. It was the backbone of the global economy. It was scalable. And I understood systems. I understood how to move things from point A to point B efficiently. While I was grinding, Frank was investing. I heard about it through the grapevine, mostly from distant aunts or the occasional text from my mother. Frank had taken a second mortgage on the house. He bought into a vending machine franchise. He was going to be a tycoon. The vending machines were in terrible locations. The maintenance costs were higher than the revenue. He lost $30,000 in 6 months. Then it was a landscaping business. He bought top-of-the-line equipment, hired a bunch of guys, and tried to manage them from his living room. He didn't know how to bid on contracts. The equipment was stolen. The business folded. Then it was cryptocurrency. This was early on, but Frank managed to buy at the absolute peak of a hype cycle and sell at the crash. He had the reverse Midas touch. Everything he touched turned to debt. Meanwhile, Kyle was following in Frank's footsteps. He dropped out of college after 1 semester because the professors were idiots who didn't understand his vision. He moved back home. He drove Frank's car. He borrowed money from Frank that he never paid back. They were 2 drowning men fighting over a life preserver that was actually an anchor. I graduated at the top of my class. I got hired by a major logistics firm immediately. My starting salary was more than Frank had ever made in his best year. I did not call them to brag. I just kept working. 5 years into my career, I started my own consultancy. I saw a gap in the market regarding last-mile delivery optimization for mid-sized e-commerce companies. I wrote the software myself. I hired a small team. We worked out of a garage, then a rented office, then a floor of a downtown high-rise. By the time I was 30, I was a millionaire. By the time I was 35, I sold the company to a tech giant for a sum that would have looked like a phone number to 18-year-old me. I stayed on as a consultant. I had stock options. I had a portfolio. I met my wife, Elena, during the merger. She was an attorney for the acquiring firm. She was sharp, kind, and came from a loving family. When I told her about Frank, she did not pity me. She just got angry. "He sounds like a small man," she said. "Small men cast long shadows only when the sun is going down." I loved her for that. I maintained low contact with my mother. I sent her a card on her birthday. I called on Christmas. I never visited. I knew that if I visited, I would have to see him. And I was not ready. Not yet. I heard the updates. They had downsized. They sold the house I grew up in, the one Frank claimed was his kingdom, and moved into a rental. Kyle was 30 years old, living on their couch, working odd jobs, and getting fired for attitude problems. Frank had retired, but not by choice. His company had laid him off, citing redundancy. He had no pension, just Social Security and whatever was left of his 401k after his bad investments. Then came the silence. For 4 years, I heard nothing. No requests for money. No guilt trips. I assumed they were just living their lives, fading into mediocrity. Then the phone rang. Friday came. I arrived at the steakhouse on 4th 15 minutes early. I wore a tailored suit. I wore the watch Elena had bought me for our anniversary. It cost more than Frank's first BMW. I did not wear these things to show off. I wore them as armor. I sat at a booth in the back. I ordered a sparkling water. At 7 p.m. exactly, they walked in. My mother looked tired. Her hair was gray and thinning. She wore a dress that I recognized from 10 years ago. It hung loosely on her frame. Frank looked like a ghost of himself. He had lost weight, but not in a healthy way. His skin was sallow. He walked with a slight limp. But his eyes were the same. They darted around the room, assessing, judging, calculating the cost of everything. Kyle was with them. I had not invited Kyle. He was wearing a hoodie and jeans. He looked bored. They saw me. Frank straightened his posture. He put on that familiar, smarmy smile. "Alex," he boomed. It was too loud for the restaurant. Heads turned. "Look at you. Big shot." He slid into the booth opposite me. Kyle sat next to him. My mother sat on the edge, looking terrified. "Hello, Frank." "Mom." "Kyle." "Hey bro," Kyle grunted. He picked up the menu. "Damn. $50 for a steak? You paying?" "I am paying," I said. Frank nodded approvingly. "Good. Good. You owe us a nice meal. It has been a long time." "It has," I said. The waiter came over. Frank ordered the most expensive steak on the menu and a bottle of wine without asking anyone else. Kyle ordered the lobster. My mother ordered a side salad. "Order a meal, Mom," I said gently. "Please." She looked at Frank. He gave a slight nod. She ordered the chicken. We ate in awkward silence for 20 minutes. Frank chewed with his mouth open. He complained about the wine being too dry. He complained about the service. He criticized the decor. "So," Frank said, wiping grease from his lip with a cloth napkin, "I guess you are wondering why we reached out." "I assume you need money," I said. I cut a piece of my filet mignon. Frank laughed, but it was nervous. "Money? Well, sure. Money is always useful. But this is about family, Alex. It is about legacy." He leaned in. "I have an opportunity. A really big one. A friend of mine, a guy I used to work with, he has an inside track on a land development deal just outside the city. Commercial zoning. Guaranteed to triple in value in 2 years. But the buy-in is steep. Banks are being tight. They do not understand visionaries." "How much?" I asked. 200,000, Frank said. He said it quickly, like ripping off a band-aid. "But here is the thing. I am not asking for a handout. I am asking for a partner. You put up the capital. I handle the logistics, the permits, the contractors. We split the profits 60-40. 60 for me, since I am doing the legwork." I put my fork down. I took a sip of water. I looked at Kyle. "And where do you fit in, Kyle?" "I am going to be the site manager," Kyle said, puffing out his chest. "Keep the crew in line." "I see," I said. "So, let me get this straight. You want me to give you $200,000 cash. You want to use it to buy land based on a tip from a guy you used to work with. And you, Frank, with zero experience in commercial development, are going to manage the project. And Kyle, who has never held a job for more than 6 months, is going to supervise a construction crew." "It is a foolproof plan," Frank insisted. "The market is exploding." "And what happens if it fails?" I asked. "It won't," Frank said. "I have a feeling about this one." "Like the vending machines?" I asked. Frank's face turned red. "That was bad luck. The market shifted." "Like the landscaping business?" I continued. "Like the crypto?" "Stop living in the past," Frank snapped. "This is business. You have the money." I checked. "I saw the article about your company sale. You are sitting on millions. 200 grand is nothing to you. It is pocket change. Are you going to help your family or not?" My mother reached across the table and touched my hand. Her hand was cold. "Please, Alex," she whispered. We are in trouble. If we don't come up with some money soon, we are going to lose the rental. We have debts. Credit cards. Frank took out a loan from some bad people." I looked at her. I felt a pang of pity, but it was quickly smothered by the reality of the situation. "So this isn't an investment," I said. "This is a bailout. You want me to pay off your gambling debts and bad loans." "It is an investment." Frank shouted. He slammed his hand on the table. The silverware rattled. "Don't you dare talk down to me, boy. I raised you. I put a roof over your head. I gave you the clothes on your back. You ungrateful little brat. You think because you got lucky with some computer nonsense that you are better than me? I am the man of this family. I demand some respect." The restaurant went silent. The manager started walking toward our table. I held up a hand to stop him. I looked at Frank. I really looked at him. I saw the fear behind the bluster. I saw the desperation. And I saw the absolute unyielding arrogance that had ruined his life. "You raised me?" I asked quietly. "Yes," Frank hissed. "You didn't raise me," I said. "You tolerated me. You lived in the same house as me. You ate the food my mother cooked. But you didn't raise me. You used me as a punching bag for your own insecurities." "I made you tough," Frank said. "I was hard on you because I knew you needed it. Look at you now. You are successful. Why? Because I pushed you. Because I told you the truth." I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. You think you are responsible for my success? I asked. That is the most delusional thing you have ever said, and that is a high bar. I leaned forward. I succeeded in spite of you, Frank. Not because of you. Every late night, every skipped meal, every hour I spent studying while my eyes burned, I did that to get away from you. My success is a fortress I built to keep people like you out. You owe us, Kyle muttered. We are family. I don't owe you a dime, I said to Kyle. And neither do I owe you, Frank. You presented me with an invoice when I was 18, remember? $40,000. You told me I was a bad investment. Sunk costs. No return. Frank's eyes widened. He remembered. I was teaching you fiscal responsibility, he stammered. Well, lesson learned, I said. I have analyzed the proposal you just put in front of me. And I am declining the opportunity. Alex, my mother pleaded. They will hurt him. The loan sharks. Then he should not have borrowed the money, I said coldly. Frank is a believer in personal responsibility. Aren't you, Frank? The real world chews you up. Smart doesn't put food on the table. Hustle does. I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out a checkbook. Frank's eyes lit up. He thought he had one. He thought the guilt trip had worked. I wrote a check. I tore it out. I slid it across the table. Frank grabbed it. He looked at the amount. His face fell. What is this? He whispered. $300, I said. $300. Frank roared. Is this a joke? When you kicked me out, I said, I had $300 to my name. It was enough for me to survive. It was enough for me to start my life. Since you are the master of grit and hustle, surely you can turn $300 into a fortune. After all, you are the genius. I am just the tinkerer. Frank crumbled the check in his fist. He looked like he was going to throw it at me. Then, his survival instinct kicked in. He smoothed it out. He put it in his pocket. He needed that $300. You are a cold bastard, Frank said. There was no fire left in his voice. Just defeat. I had a good teacher, I said. I placed $300 bills on the table to cover the dinner. I stood up. Mom, I said. If you ever decide to leave him, if you ever decide you want to be free of this black hole of a man, call me. I will set you up in an apartment. I will pay for everything. But not a single cent goes to him. Not for his debts, not for his schemes, not for his food. If you stay with him, you stay with the consequences of his choices. She looked down at her hands. She was crying. But she did not move. She would never leave him. She was too afraid of being alone, even if being together meant drowning. Goodbye, Frank, I said. Don't call me again. I walked out of the restaurant. The night air was cool. I walked to my car, got in, and drove home. I found my wife sitting on the patio, reading a book. She looked up as I walked in. How did it go? She asked. It went exactly how it had to go, I said. I sat down next to her. I felt lighter. The anger I had been carrying for 20 years was gone. It wasn't resolved, exactly. It hadn't vanished into thin air. But it had transformed. It was no longer a fire burning inside me. It was just ash. Cold, inert ash. Frank was right about one thing. The real world is hard. It doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care about your dreams. But he was wrong about the most important thing. He thought cruelty was strength. He thought kindness was weakness. I checked my bank account on my phone. The numbers were there. Safe. Secure. I thought about the $300 I gave him. I knew exactly where it would go. A bottle of whiskey. A scratch-off ticket. A tank of gas to drive to another hopeless meeting. It didn't matter. I had amounted to something. I was a man who protected his family. I was a man who built things. I was a man who broke the cycle. And Frank? Frank was just a bad investment. And I had finally liquidated the asset. My phone rang again 2 days later. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to the message later. She was crying. She said the people Frank owed money to had come to the house. They took the television. They took her jewelry. They threatened to take the car. "Please, Alex," she sobbed. "Just this once. He is sorry. He really is." I deleted the message. I blocked the number. It sounds harsh. I know some people will read this and think I am a monster. They will say, "But he is family." They will say, "You have millions, why not just pay it off?" Because if I paid it off, I would be buying back into the lie. I would be validating everything he ever did. I would be telling him that he can treat people like garbage and still get saved in the end. I am not a savior. I am an engineer. I look at structural integrity. I look at foundations. Frank's foundation was rotten. If you build on rot, the house collapses. You don't prop it up with gold bars. You let it fall. And you build something new, somewhere else, on solid ground. I went into the garage that weekend. I found the old shoebox. I opened it. The plastic trophy was there. The glue had yellowed with age. The gold paint was chipping. First place. Robotics. I held it for a long time. Then I tossed it in the trash. I didn't need the trophy anymore to prove I was worth something. I didn't need the anger. I went back inside to my wife. We were planning a trip to Italy. We were talking about maybe having kids of our own. If we have a son, I will never tell him he is soft. I will never tell him he is useless. I will watch him build his towers, and I will hand him the bricks. That is the real victory. That is the return on investment. And that is worth every single penny I didn't give to Frank. Update, 6 months later. I did not intend to write an update, but given the messages I received, I felt it necessary to close the loop. I have not spoken to Frank or Kyle. I have maintained no contact. However, in a small town, or even a city where circles overlap, news travels. I found out through a former neighbor that Frank and my mother were evicted 3 months after our dinner. The commercial development deal was, as I suspected, a scam. The friend Frank trusted disappeared with the deposit money Frank had scraped together by pawning the last of their belongings. They are currently living in a motel on the outskirts of town. Kyle apparently left them. He moved in with a girlfriend in another state. When the money ran dry, so did his loyalty. He didn't stick around to help them move. He just took the car, which was in Frank's name but signed over under duress, I imagine, and vanished. My mother reached out to my wife via Facebook Messenger. She sent a long rambling paragraph about forgiveness and blood being thicker than water. My wife, bless her, didn't reply. She just showed me the message and asked what I wanted to do. "Nothing," I said. And then, something happened that I didn't expect. I received a letter in the mail. It was handwritten. No return address, but I recognized the jagged, aggressive slant of the handwriting immediately. It was from Frank. I opened it over the trash can, half expecting it to contain anthrax or some final venomous curse. It was a single page of lined notebook paper. "Alex, you think you won. You think because you have the big house and the fancy car that you are the winner. But you are empty. You have no heart. I saw it in your eyes at the restaurant. You are cold. A machine. I may be broke. I may be living in a dump. But I have my pride. I never took a handout from anyone. I made my own way. And I sleep fine at night knowing I didn't turn my back on my own blood. Keep your money. It will not keep you warm when you die alone. Frank." I read the letter twice. The irony was so dense it almost had its own gravitational pull. "I never took a handout," said the man who had just begged me for $200,000. "I have my pride," said the man living in a motel because he refused to get a regular job. He was rewriting history even as he was drowning in the present. He was incapable of self-reflection. To the bitter end, he was the hero of his own tragedy. I realized then that I had made the right choice. If I had given him the money, he would have rewritten that too. He would have told himself that he allowed me to help him, that he was doing me a favor by letting me share in his success. He would have twisted my generosity into his dominance. I tore the letter into small pieces. I dropped them into the recycling bin. "Keep your money. It will not keep you warm." He was wrong about that too. The heating system in my house is excellent. My blankets are high thread count. And the warmth of a life built on honesty, hard work, and mutual respect with a partner who actually loves me? That is a warmth Frank has never known. He has the warmth of his anger. He has the warmth of his cheap vodka. I have my life. I walked into the kitchen. Elena was making pasta. The smell of garlic and basil filled the air. It smelled like home. "Who was the letter from?" she asked. "Nobody," I said. "Just junk mail." She smiled and handed me a glass of wine. "Good," she said. I threw out the rest of the mail. "We don't need any clutter." "No," I agreed. "We don't." I took a sip of wine. It was smooth. It didn't taste like vinegar. I am done looking back. The rearview mirror is broken. There is only the road ahead. And for the first time in my life, the road is clear. No obstacles. No invoices. No voices telling me I can't make the journey. Just the hum of the engine and the open horizon. I am Alex. I am a tinkerer. I am an engineer. And I amount to everything I choose to be. Edit for context regarding the golden child dynamic. A few people in the comments asked for more specifics on Kyle and why I hold so much resentment toward him, considering he was just a kid when the abuse started. It's a fair question. When we were young, I didn't blame Kyle. He was a baby, then a toddler. He didn't ask to be spoiled. But as we got older, Kyle learned to weaponize Frank's favoritism. Example, when I was 14, I saved up for a Game Boy. It took me 6 months of mowing lawns. I bought it, along with Pokemon Blue. I kept it in my desk drawer. 2 weeks later, I came home from school to find the Game Boy gone. I found Kyle in the living room playing it. He had peanut butter smeared on the buttons. The screen had a scratch. I grabbed it back. "This is mine," I yelled. Kyle started screaming. Not crying, screaming. He threw himself on the floor. Frank came running in. "What did you do to him?" he demanded. "He stole my Game Boy," I said. "He was just playing with it," Frank said. "You are the older brother. You should share. Don't be selfish." "I bought it with my own money," I argued. "Everything under this roof belongs to me," Frank said. He took the Game Boy from my hands and gave it back to Kyle. Kyle smirked. It was a look of pure, undistilled malice. He knew he had immunity. Kyle played with it for a week, got bored, and left it in the driveway where Frank ran over it with the car. Frank blamed me for leaving it outside. So no. Kyle wasn't an innocent bystander. He was a collaborator. He learned that if he aligned himself with the tyrant, he got the spoils. He grew up believing the world owed him everything because Frank told him so. The tragedy of Kyle is that he believed the hype. He thought he was special because Frank said he was. He never developed a work ethic because he was never required to. He never learned to handle failure because he was never allowed to fail. In a way, Frank destroyed Kyle more thoroughly than he tried to destroy me. He broke me down, which forced me to rebuild myself stronger. He pumped Kyle full of hot air until he floated away from reality, and when he finally popped, there was nothing inside. I don't hate Kyle anymore. I just pity him. He is a 30-year-old child waiting for a daddy to fix a world that refuses to play by his rules. But pity doesn't cost $200,000. Final thoughts on forgiveness. I have received a lot of DMs telling me that forgiveness is for me, not for them. That holding on to this grudge is poisoning me. I disagree. There is a difference between holding a grudge and maintaining a boundary. A grudge is active. It is waking up every morning hoping they suffer. It is stalking their social media. It is slashing their tires. I don't do those things. I don't hope they suffer. I just don't care if they do. Indifference is the opposite of love. Not hate. Hate implies passion. Hate implies that they still have power over your emotions. I have reached the state of indifference. If Frank won the lottery tomorrow, I wouldn't be angry. I wouldn't want to share. I would just shrug. If Frank ends up on the street, I won't laugh. I won't drive by to gloat. I will just keep driving. That is peace. Forgiveness, in the way most people use the word, implies a restoration of relationship. It implies saying, "It's okay, let's try again." It is not okay. And we will not try again. Some bridges are not meant to be repaired. They are meant to be burned so that the enemy cannot follow you. I lit the match. I watched it burn. And now, I am warm. End of story.